Marvel. Game Maker System by NunuXD Chapter 126-150. Swoosh. An arrow flew in and landed perfectly in the open mouth of a screaming imp, critically damaging the monster. As ESW was a game where the player was in full control of his character's body, ranged classes needed to effectively land attacks to deal damage, and depending on where the attack landed, critical damage could be triggered, which made the hunter class harder than other classes to master. Of course, the game had aim assist for players who didn't know how to use weapons or bows, but that aim assist only helped players aim at monsters, chests, and even that didn't guarantee a 100% hit rate. As for hitting locations that caused critical damage, players had to aim automatically. With Alex's deadshot level aim, hitting the arrows where critical damage triggered was very easy, so much so that all of his arrows hit critical points 100% of the time. Especially since imps didn't have armor or helmets, which made it even easier for Alex. "I don't think I can take it," Scott yelled in concern as he saw his HP bar going down and felt his body getting weaker and weaker. "I think in the next attack I'll die." Alex was reloading the bow as fast as possible with another arrow to try to help Scott so he wouldn't die, but from what he calculated, even if he managed to kill one of the imps that was hitting Scott, the other one would probably land the next attack on it, and no one could stop this attack. "Damn it, it's just a hit," Kurt yelled in frustration as he used the dagger to try and slash the body of one of the imps that had its back to him. Anna, Kitty and even Jean were looking at this a little desperately. Although Jean didn't feel the same way about Scott that he felt about her, she didn't want to see her friend die in front of her, especially with the experience bar almost full. After killing this imp probably everyone besides Alex would level up, but if Scott died he would have to start all over again, falling behind. "I don't have any more mana." Kitty screamed desperately and a little guilty for having used a damage skill at the wrong time, which meant that she didn't have enough mana right now. Swoosh. Another arrow flew in and penetrated the imp's skull from the side, dealing more critical damage and finally killing this imp, but the other one still had 30% HP left and the next attack would definitely hit. Alex knew that Scott would not completely lose his experience bar, as he also used the same WoW strategy, where the player could respawn in the graveyard and lose all experience, or for players of level 2 or more, decrease 1 level, or the player could go back in soul mode to their own body and only lose 50% of it. It's just that other players didn't know about it yet and thought it was a fixed penalty since it wasn't as intuitive as WoW. But still, Alex didn't want to see Scott die in front of him. Seeing that remaining imp's claw coming in slow motion, everyone despaired and practically accepted that Scott was going to die. But to their surprise, when the imp's claw was going to hit Scott's body, it was as if Scott's body went up in smoke at that spot and the claw passed through him without causing any damage, leaving everyone besides Alex, even the imp, confused. Without thinking too much, seeing that they had a chance to save Scott, everyone using whatever attack they had available, even Kitty went close to the imp to hit it with her staff to deal as much damage as possible and they finally managed to kill the imp. When the imp finally died, a message appeared in front of everyone. "Congratulations on eliminating the imp camp." With the message appearing, a wooden chest appeared in the center of the camp, leaving everyone surprised and excited. But momentarily ignoring the trunk, the group looked at Scott and asked, "What was that?" Scott heard this and looked at them with an expression as confused as theirs. "I have no idea." Alex, who set up everything in the game, clearly knew, but he had to think of a way to tell them that without appearing to know it on the outside. "I think I know," Anna said excitedly. Everyone looked at her in surprise, now including Alex. "What is it?" Anna smiled as she opened a menu and beckoned them to come and see. "Come here, check it out." According to our skills window, within the Night Elf racial skill, there is a skill that a player has a 1% chance to dodge an attack. I think this skill is what turned that part of Scott's body into a kind of smoke and dodged the imp's attack. Listening to Anna's explanation, everyone opened their skill window and went to check it out, and indeed, everyone had this skill. Damn, it only has a 1% chance to activate, and you managed to get it to activate at such a critical moment, Scott. How lucky is that? Kurt said excitedly as he punched Scott. Feeling Kurt's little punch, Scott's heart stopped and he looked at Kurt as if he saw a ghost. Kurt soon understood what he had done and glanced quickly at Scott's HP bar, afraid he had taken what little was left of Scott's HP and killed him. Fortunately, there was no open-world PvP between players of the same faction, so Scott was still alive and well. Really, that was pure luck, ha ha ha. Once the scare wore off, Scott was very excited. Alex looked at Anna and was surprised by her quick deduction. This really was why Scott survived. Of course, that dodge rate wasn't exactly 1%. The more desperate the player was to survive, the higher the chance to dodge this racial skill was, which probably increased to 5% in such a desperate moment like this, and 0.001% when he wasn't in danger, which in the end gave a rate of 1% on average, but made the player feel like he was the luckiest person in the world, which would generate a lot more dopamine for the players and encourage them to play even more. But Scott managed to activate this ability with only a 5% chance of activating. He had to admit, this really was pure luck, mainly because Alex didn't use any admin power to help Scott. The items that were in the wooden chest were just simple level 1 items, which was the level of monsters, but for them who had almost no items equipped, it was already a huge improvement that made everyone happy. So this is how you feel about being a wizard, Alex? Jean looked at Alex and asked while holding her staff, gaining the attention of Kitty, who was also using magic, and the others, who were just curious. Alex thought for a while before answering. I haven't played a mage yet to know, and I haven't used any magic skills, but seeing how you are using magic, I think the difference is not as big as it actually is. Maybe at the moment this is the closest feeling you guys might have to use real magic. Hearing this, Jean got excited and thought that using magic in real life must be a lot more fun, but using magic in ESW was still really cool. For some reason, she felt like she wanted to learn some fire magic. As for Anna, when she heard Alex's answer, she felt a little regretful for not choosing a magical class, since she wanted to know how her boyfriend felt when he used magic in real life. When Alex saw this, he noticed that not only did Anna feel that way, but Scott and Kurt were also a bit regretful, so he said, "Don't worry, I think there should be magic skills for all classes, and as Notch said, nothing prevents a class from learning skills from others, so in the future you can try that out in your classes as well." Hearing this, the three got more excited as Anna ran over and hugged Alex's arm happily. As everyone reached level 2 by eliminating this imp camp except Alex, the group decided to kill a few more monsters before returning to the city, since that way Alex would be able to level up when he completed the quest and would reach their level. In total they played for over 4 hours and only managed to level up 1, which for Alex's previous world games, that would be like blasphemy compared to the 40 seconds it usually takes a player to reach level 2. But in this world no one cared about it. Everyone was so excited about this new world that they even felt it made the game even more fun, making every little amount of XP so important that the feeling of leveling up was that much more exciting. As time passed, the amount of players entering ESW increased more and more. Even Alex was a little concerned that the cities he selected to be the players' starting cities would become overcrowded. He had imagined that such a large amount of players would play, but he didn't think that the players wouldn't disconnect anytime soon. From what he had experienced in Minecraft and Fortnite, despite the games being a lot of fun, players were still only an average of 6 hours playing, but in ESW Alex saw that there were players who had been playing for more than 12 hours and did not intend to disconnect so early. Am I really going to have to implement this? Alex wondered worriedly as he looked at a prompt on his computer screen. Although in other games there were players who spent a lot of time playing, it wasn't being as exaggerated as in ESW, especially when the time was getting longer and longer to the point that some people even reached 14 hours without disconnecting. I really have to do this. Alex was finally convinced and clicked to confirm. Suddenly, people who had been playing for over 14 hours saw a message appear in front of them. Hello 4X, you've played for more than 14 hours and we at Mojang are concerned about your health. Staying logged in for so long without eating, drinking water, or moving around in the real world can seriously damage your health, so please log out of the game and come back in a few hours. When most of these players saw this message, they were shocked that so much time had passed and they hadn't even noticed. Some were even more startled when they saw that it was almost time for them to go to work in real life and quickly logged out of the game, grateful for the reminder. While other players did not care about the warning and continued playing anyway, until a second message appeared for these people. Hello again 4X, we saw that you have been playing for 15 hours non-stop and we cannot allow your health to be harmed because of our gameplay. Unfortunately, we will have to disconnect you from the game in 10 minutes, in that time please return to a safe city and find a secluded spot so your character is not in danger while you disconnect. When the remaining players saw this message, some had a guilty conscience and did exactly as the message suggested, while others were furious that they were forced to stop playing and wanted to just ignore this message like the previous message. But when they saw the timer 10 minutes down, they soon gave up trying to resist and also went to a safe place, as they were afraid of dying and losing a level. Mainly that after so much time playing, some players had already reached level 3 and knew how sad it would be to lose that progress. The news about this warning from Mojang broke when some players posted the print screen of it on the Oasis forum. Even though the company was forcing players to do something they didn't want to do, this was seen very well by the game's community, as unlike other companies who wanted players to spend as much time as possible playing their game, Mojang did the opposite, preventing players from overplaying and affecting their health. Fortunately, the game also rested the players' bodies as if they were sleeping, while when the players exited the game they could still live their lives normally without worrying about having lost almost an entire day. In the posts about this, there were still some voices from players complaining that this wasn't fair, but Mojang's response was very adamant about this, always stating that players' safety was always one of their highest priorities and that they would not reverse this decision, which drew even more goodwill from other players, and even more from the players' spouse parents who were worried about people they loved getting trapped in a game. As it was the day after ESW's release, news about the game was splashed all over the newspapers and even appearing on news channels around the world. Virtual reality game wins the hearts of billions of people around the world. Families that live far away can find each other again in the game. Parents have found a great way to spend time with their children and improve their friendship. Can this game cause any harm? All over the world, wherever anyone went, it was possible to find someone talking about the adventure they had in ESW and the things they experienced. People who didn't know each other well started talking more about what they did, and even people who knew each other in ESW got together in the real world to talk, and millions of new friendships emerged overnight. Although Oasis also had this ability, ESW was a new world where people had to fight together and needed each other's help, so the ease of making friends with people looking for groups was very great. Unlike Fortnite that could be played solo, ESW practically needed a group of people to play together, since for an ordinary person, dealing with a monster was already difficult, let alone dealing with groups of monsters, which increased the interaction even more among the players. But while many people were happy with the new rule limiting players' playing time, one person was completely dissatisfied. Looking at the Oasis hub that once looked so nice and cool, and now compared to the world of Azeroth has become so commonplace, Hulk sighed in disappointment. Hulk just wanted to keep playing, now Hulk has nowhere else to go, Hulk thought in frustration as he stared at the portal to Azeroth that he couldn't go through for another 9 hours. Peter and Ned were at school, so Hulk actually got a little lonely in Oasis. What should Hulk do now? Hulk wondered sadly. Suddenly, Hulk saw something that attracted his attention. This building wasn't here before, Hulk doesn't remember that. Hulk looked at it confused. Coming closer, Hulk was finally able to read what it was. Azeroth PvP Coliseum. Alex thought that an arena in Azeroth would really be great, but how could this be implemented without breaking players' immersion? Simple, do it in Oasis. Their players will be able to use their ESW characters and compete with other players, and even those who haven't played ESW will be able to go to the arena to watch, which will arouse the interest of new players, thus ensuring that even more people are interested in the game and new subscribers emerged. Thus the Azeroth PvP Coliseum was born. Just as players were getting more and more excited about ESW, heroes also had a lot of fun in the game. Among these heroes, Tony Stark was the most contradictory. On the one hand, like Tony Stark, the rich playboy, what he bragged about most was the good looks he had, the money he had, and the intelligence he had. So when he went to select his race in ESW, the first thing he thought of was to choose the human race, since for his aesthetic, humans were definitely the most beautiful. But he couldn't resist curiosity and had to look up the history of each race before making a choice, and that's when he fell into a contradiction. Despite the humans being the prettiest, Tony saw that what the humans' most distinguishing characteristic was how talented they were in magic, which for him wasn't a problem, as he was also curious about the magic that Notch used when they fought with Abomination. But the problem is that the best races when dealing with technology were not humans, but gnomes and dwarves. Then Tony fell into doubt. What should I choose, a beautiful and glorious human, a tiny and ugly gnome, or a rude dwarf? Tony asked himself mentally in frustration as he read the characteristics of each race. Looking at the comparison between the three races, Tony was just about to make up his mind when he thought of something. With the character in front of him, Tony decided to change something. The appearance of a small gnome quickly changed into a beautiful and hot night elf, with a delicate belly and long legs. Fuck it, I'll be a human. Tony soon discarded the two small races and decided to be a human without further thought. When he saw the difference in height between the night elf and the two small races, Tony didn't even consider choosing the other two. The biggest reason for this was that if he was going to date a beautiful night elf, what could he do as a gnome? Kiss her knee. He wouldn't even reach her waist to do other things. So Tony Stark used ESW's artificial intelligence to perfectly recreate his real-life body, just making his muscles a little bulkier and taking off the excess fat that built up on his belly from lack of exercise, and he was quite satisfied. Thus was born Tony Stark, the human wizard. Since there wasn't a technology-related class, Tony was content with choosing the wizard class as he was curious how Alex felt about using magic in real life, so he could use that knowledge to even help him make armor. Just like Tony, other heroes were also choosing their races and classes. But unlike Tony, who had the patience to read the stories of all races, other heroes weren't as patient as he was. So for these players, Alex had made some introductory videos where a narrator would tell the story of each race in the most interesting way as well as explain the characteristics of that race. Thor initially intended to be a human, as he was the most similar to the Aesir Protoss, which was his race, but when he saw the characteristics of the dwarfs, he couldn't resist and became a dwarf as well. What most attracted his attention was the sincerity with which dwarfs treat their friends, as well as how much this race loves to drink, which suited Thor the most. For his class, Thor decided to be a paladin, after seeing that it was the only class that used a real hammer. Steve Rogers didn't surprise Alex by choosing a human paladin, as both race and class really suited this honest man very well. What surprised Alex was that both the Black Panther and the players of Wakanda all chose to become Night Elf druids, especially when they realized that only Tauren and Night Elf could choose that class and that only Night Elves actually became druids. Black Panthers is the race's transformation, while Taurens transformed into lions. These people really are very attached to their beliefs, Alex commented while seeing that an entire country that intended to join a faction suddenly switched to another faction just because of an aesthetic change. They are really lucky. I think the only class that manages to be self-sufficient is the druid, as they can transform into bears and become tanks, or transform into Black Panthers and become DPS, or transform into owls to become healers. What remains for me is just to see if they would be willing to transform into something like someone from Black Panther, haha. Alex laughed thinking of a herd of thousands of Black Panthers running towards an enemy. The X-Men apparently reached a consensus that they would be in the Alliance, with most of them joining the Night Elves, but with others scattered among the other three races as well. From what Ollie saw in the Oasis data, SHIELD agents were equally divided into each of the 8 races in the game, both in the Alliance and in the Horde, which would probably make it easier for them to get information from everyone. Hydra is also doing the same thing, even infiltrating the biggest guilds in the game to get more power too, which Alex had to admit, they were a few steps ahead of S.H.I.E.L.D. Hulk, Ned, Peter, Bruce Banner and Abomination all became orcs, and all for the same reason, because Hulk decided to be an orc. Some just wanted to support Hulk, others wanted to understand it better. Seeing the list of players that did not stop growing, while many heroes and even villains joined the game, Alex's smile did not stop growing. This feeling of magic is very strange, Wong said, confused as he felt mana course through his body. Being used to using Kamar Taja's magic in the real world, where he had to borrow magical power from other dimensions, feeling mana flowing in his body, a magical power that truly belonged to him, was something completely new and mysterious to him. Wong. Although I experienced a feeling somewhat similar to Minecraft's magic mod, the feeling there was very weak, as it was a much less realistic game and wasn't focused on magic. As ESW was a game with a lot of focus on combat and the development of the game's characters, the feeling of mana and control of it in his body was much stronger. Stranger, next to Wong, didn't feel anything strange about this, since the only true contact with magic he had so far had been through Minecraft, so for him, thinking about magic, the first thing that came to his mind was the mana in his body and how he should control it. As the two completed missions together and killed monsters, they were surprised to discover that Stranger's talent in using ESW spells was far greater than Wong's. While Wong needed to recite the fireball spell for 2 seconds, Strange had already managed to reduce the time to recite the spell to just 1.5 seconds. Thinking about common situations, just a difference of 0.5 seconds wasn't much, but in a battle where the mage had to stand still to cast a spell, having 0.5 seconds more to move between one spell and another was like the difference between heaven and earth. "Why are you able to cast the spell faster than me?" Wong asked, a little frustrated. "You even skipped a few words and the spell worked just the same." Stranger had a proud, slightly arrogant smile on his face. He, after using the fireball a few times, I've already started to analyze the way my mana has to flow in my body for the spell to work, so while I'm reciting the spell, I control my mana to reproduce some more movements quickly so I can skip some words. Then that's it. Wong said excitedly as he tried to do the same thing as Stranger, but he only managed to get one word out of the spell on the first try, which wasn't that helpful in reducing casting time. Just like this buff for mages, Alex also did the same thing with other classes, like warriors would be able to use skills more often if they actually learned the skills, or paladins would deal more damage the more faith they showed when using skills. "I think we can use this to get more members for our school." Wong saw how useful this was and knew that spreading this knowledge among the other players could greatly improve the image of their magic school among the mages, which would result in more people joining them, which would result in more knowledge reaching them, thus creating an increasingly larger snowball. But Stranger was still a little hesitant about it. With a discerning eye, Wong noticed Stranger's thoughts and thought of a response. "You know that as a school senior, the more members you have, the more people will follow you, right?" Wong said with a cunning expression. Hearing this, Stranger changed his attitude completely and responded, "Where did you think of this? I'm not that kind of person, let's spread this knowledge to help more and more people." Wong just shook his head and laughed as he wrote a tutorial and sent it to some players in charge of the school's PR so they could publish it. Stranger at this point hadn't yet suffered the car accident and gone through Kamar Taja's difficult times, so he still had traces of the arrogant doctor he always was. Fortunately, with the time he was spending at magic school, his personality was improving more and more, since even without him realizing it, seeing other players willing to listen to what he had to say and learning from him gave him a sense of very strong realization in him, something that over time would only grow stronger. While these two human mages were dealing with monsters alone, a group of 3 orcs were also venturing into the game's forests. In this group there were 3 orcs with different classes, a warrior, a shaman and a warlock. Hulk was the warrior, Peter was the shaman, while Ned was the warlock. Seeing how cool the demons warlocks could summon were, Ned didn't think twice before choosing this class. Hulk didn't even need to explain why he chose warrior. As for Peter, he intended to choose the rogue class, but thinking that their group would probably need someone to be a healer, and that shamans could also deal damage if they needed to, Peter finally decided to choose to be a shaman. "We finally killed the last one," Ned said excitedly as he streamed them playing. Despite the number of players in ESW at the moment being greater than 1 billion, Ned's livestream had the highest peak of viewers he has ever had. These viewers were both players who couldn't be online in the game at the moment, and people who heard about the game and decided to look for what it was. "Hey Ned, what's that behind the tree?" Suddenly, one of the comments caught Ned's attention. Confused by what this viewer meant, Ned looked around and saw that behind a tree was a strange building. As the houses of the Horde races were different from the houses they were used to, Ned had a little trouble understanding what it was, but when he got closer, he soon understood that it was a house. "Hey guys, check this out," he said while pointing forward. The other two orcs also looked at the house in front of them in confusion. "Did this house burn down?" Peter asked, confused as he looked at the house. Hulk just looked at it for a few seconds, but when he saw that he didn't have any enemies, half of the interest he had soon disappeared. But he still stayed there. To the group's surprise, the little imp that Ned had summoned began sniffing the air and stood in an alert stance, ready to face any enemy that appeared. Seeing this little imp like this, the three orcs also became worried and became more alert. Since they started playing, they realized that the imp was much smarter than they imagined. In moments of play, he surprisingly became happier and played with them, even playing some pranks on Peter and Hulk, which made Ned's viewers laugh a lot. In tense moments, the imp was able to sense the danger before most of the players, which helped the group a lot to avoid being attacked by surprise. So when they saw the imp's reaction, the three players were worried, but their curiosity towards the burned house became even greater. "Let's go back," Ned asked, trying to hide his fear. But Hulk quickly realized Ned's fear and began to laugh. Ned very fearful, Hulk is not afraid, Hulk goes ahead, Ned and Peter follow behind. As soon as Hulk said that, he started walking towards the house, forcing the other two to follow him as well, ready for any enemy attack that might come his way. The closer they got to the house, the more scared Ned and Peter became. Hulk was acting as usual, as if nothing could shake him. Peter was getting really a little scared as he got closer and closer to each house, and Ned was extremely scared, looking around constantly looking for anything strange. When they finally got close to the house, Hulk looked around and saw nothing strange. "Why did this house burn?" Hulk asked himself in confusion as he looked around. Suddenly, a voice was heard from inside the house. "Who's there? Are you Dad?" That was a little girl's voice, very sweet but confused. When Hulk heard this, he didn't think much and immediately went in the direction of the voice. Ned was a little curious and also followed, but Ned was shaking in place with fear. "A dark place, a little girl's voice, that's clearly a demon," Ned said in horror as he took a few steps back. But he bumped into his imp, who was looking at him with a slightly angry expression. Realizing that he had unintentionally offended his imp, Ned apologized and summoned the courage to get closer to where the voice was coming from. "Hulk is here, not your father." Hulk responded to the little girl's voice as he got close. Peter was a little surprised and cautious when he saw the girl's appearance, but he still remained normal. "What is your name?" Peter asked. "Helgi. But my father says I shouldn't talk to strangers." "Are you a stranger?" the girl replied. Hearing the girl's question, Peter was momentarily confused and didn't know what to answer. To the girl, he was probably a stranger, but if he just said that, the girl might not say anything else to them. But Hulk soon responded. "Peter is not a stranger, Peter is a friend of Hulk. Hulk is a friend of Peter, no one is a stranger here." Hulk's explanation, despite being very simplistic, managed to satisfy the little girl, who became much more comfortable talking to them. At that moment Ned finally arrived at the room where they were talking, but when he saw the girl's appearance, Ned's heart almost stopped. GGGH ghost. All the fear that Ned had overcome came back, and it came back much more potent. Where? Helgi screamed in fright as she looked around and hid behind Hulk. Seeing her reaction, Peter quickly understood that this girl might not even know that she had become a ghost. Looking at her appearance, the girl was a small orc girl, but unlike the normal green skin of orcs, this girl had translucent, almost invisible skin, which probably made it very difficult to see her during the day, but at night it was almost as if she glowed in the dark. Don't worry Helgi, there aren't any ghosts. Peter was quick to calm the situation as he slowly approached Helgi and signaled Ned to calm down. Damn, why are you so fearful Ned? Such a cute girl and you are scared. I think Ned has seen too many horror movies and is now traumatized by girls' voices lol. I never thought I would find the ghost of an orc child cute, congratulations ESW. Hey, it seems like there's more content hidden behind this girl's story, it's like the world is really alive. Yes, I saw a streamer who had found a bottle with a map inside. After searching a lot, the streamer arrived at the location marked on the map and found a chest with several copper coins. It's like the world existed even without the players, and we were just another person there. Considering the amount of people playing, this is more like, we were just another billion people there. Lol. 1 billion. Has the game already reached 1 billion players? Yes, didn't you see? Mojang posted on the forum thanking the 1 billion subscribers and gave a special cover to all the first 1 billion players. Lie. I was waiting to see if the game was really good before paying, so now I missed the cover. Probably. RIP. With Alex buying Twitch and his games being so successful, keeping the chat as it was before would be completely unfeasible. As being able to read a message in a chat where millions of people are sending messages at the same time would be impossible, so Alex put artificial intelligence with big data so that the livestream chat was something like a Twitter feed, where for each viewer they would only see the comments that were most likely to engage them, whether positively or negatively, with viewers sometimes joking and other times fighting. With this change, many people came to the chat just to chat and find new friends, which was great for Alex, Twitch and the streamers, since with the greater number of users, more companies wanted to pay to run advertisements there, which meant more money for everyone. But even though it was easier to read the chat now, Ned still couldn't think about reading the chat, as he was having to heavily control his breathing so he wouldn't freak out at this little ghost girl in front of him. Did you happen to see my father? Helgi asked a little unsure after Peter and Hulk calmed her down. He was the one who made my favorite doll, but he disappeared. Looking around, Peter doesn't see anything that looks like someone has come here recently, so instead of answering he asks, "What happened to your house?" Helgi was a little apprehensive, but explained. The smoke woke me up. It was hot and I was scared, so I hid. Then it got cold and dark. I'm not scared anymore, but I'm alone. Can you play with me? We can play with you, but do you know who set your house on fire? Peter asked as he bent down to eye level with her. Hee, Helgi knows, but Helgi will only tell you if you can find Helgi. Helgi smiled as she jumped from side to side. As the sun began to rise, Helgi felt a little sleepy and looked at the three of them. Today Helgi is sleepy, so come when it gets dark again and we can play. It's okay Helgi, when it gets dark we'll come back. Peter smiled as he waved his arm at her. Hulk will also come. Hulk also nodded. Only Ned said nothing, despite trying to open his mouth several times and being too scared to say anything. When Helgi finally left, Ned was able to act normally and the first thing he did was complain. Damn, why are the ghosts in this game so realistic? Peter and Hulk just shook their heads and went to the closest town they could find on the map, thinking about getting some information about Helgi's house and maybe even getting a quest out of it. While they were developing this quest, viewers were fascinated by this mystery story that was emerging. They thought they would only find battle scenes in this game, or at most some military strategy scenes, but who knew that there were even murder investigation missions in small villages. As this information spread, more and more players began to actively look for these more interesting missions, while people who had never played the game were tempted to pay a monthly fee and see if they would like the game that seemed so interesting. Nunu note. Please, vote with of your power stones, laughing face. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. With the development of ESW, the number of players in Oasis was increasing non-stop. At one point, the growth of this was so massive that Alex saw that there were more than 2 billion people registered on Oasis. Putting that into perspective, that was the equivalent of 25% of people in the world having already logged into Oasis at least once, and considering how high Oasis player retention was, over 90% of those 2 billion people were still playing and becoming possible paying players. For now, the amount of players who spent money in the world of Oasis was 1.4 billion, even if it ranged from a monthly fee at ESW to someone who bought a new shirt for a few cents. Considering that of these 1.4 billion people who spend money on Oasis, 1.2 billion were paying the monthly ESW fee, this corresponded to an income of $12 billion every month, or in GP, approximately 60 million GP monthly. With 30 million GP to spend next month, I can possibly go to the world of Naruto without much worry after the invasion of NY. Alex thought with a smile as he looked at the amount of GP rising in his account. Of course, as the world of Naruto had a very different force system from the world of Marvel, where a Chunin would possibly be more lethal than most small heroes, Alex intended to go to that world only after the invasion of NY, since by then, many players will have already recovered ESW powers and will be able to compete with ninjas without much disadvantage. What a shame I don't remember the exact date of the invasion of NY from my previous life, but still, Alex thought aloud while searching on the computer. Looking at the news list, over 90% of it was about things related to Mojang and Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. Both about players who managed to find secret missions, and a player who even managed to unlock a secret class after completing a series of hidden missions. Everything was progressing very well, until Alex noticed some rather strange news. Crime is decreasing rapidly. What is the reason for this? Reading the news, Alex was surprised to realize that ESW was even popular among criminals, who instead of forming gangs in real life, started meeting in the game and forming a guild there. As there was PK in the game, these players quickly discovered this and saw that it was possible to kill and extort other players within the game to get items and money from these players, and then sell this in real life. Seeing that it was much safer to do this type of action in the game than in real life, most of the crimes committed by criminals were happening in the virtual world, which made city streets much safer around the world. The more developed the city, the more likely it is that ESW has positively affected the crime rate. And since peeking in the game wasn't a crime, criminals didn't have to worry about being arrested in real life. They only had to worry about getting their name read and being caught by guards in the game. But what was it like to spend a few hours, or even a few days trapped in a game compared to spending years trapped in real life? The only type of criminals who were disappointed were pedophiles and rapists, who were unable to commit any crime or abuse in the game, as the game's GM system was able to quickly identify this type of action and quickly banned these players from connecting to Oasis, making the environment much safer. For players who didn't want to deal with criminals trying to rob them, they could very well go to larger, safer cities where the guard was much stricter and which would make the game much more peaceful for them. But to Alex's surprise, few players chose to go to safer places like that, since unlike in real life where the bandits had weapons and it was dangerous to deal with them, in ESW the players who were being robbed could fight back, and since the player was more powerful than the criminal, he could even rob and kill the criminal back, which was extremely satisfying for everyone. In this way, criminals had to organize themselves better so as not to be robbed by the players, and the players had to organize themselves better so as not to fall into criminals' traps, generating a game of cat and mouse between these two types of players. Their average level is already at level 5, not bad, Alex commented while looking at the statistics. With 7 days since the launch of ESW, the average level of players having risen to 5 was already something very good, compared to how heavy the penalty for dying was, and that the distances between one mission and another were much greater. This speed was going well. Considering that players will be able to redeem their skills for real life at level 10, by then I will be able to collect several million GP so that a large number of players can redeem their skills, Alex commented while viewing the list of players with higher level. Capitaine, LV8. Silver, LV8. Scarlet, LV8. Opening square bracket, closing square bracket. But for these people, they have nothing to do but play. Alex wondered in surprise as he searched for the identity information of these players. To his surprise, he knew all three players. Capitaine was Steve Rogers, Captain America, Silver and Scarlet were Pietro and Wanda Maximoff. Considering that Steve Rogers had recently woken up in this new world, it really wasn't surprising to see him playing ESW non-stop. Even more so seeing that Steve was completely a human paladin, exactly as Alex imagined he would be. Pietro was a rogue while Wanda was a wizard. Everyone had classes that suited them perfectly. I think that since the game is in virtual reality, the probability of choosing the class that best fits their real-life personality is greater, right? Alex asked himself, trying to find a reason for this. Hey, Oasis, have you figured out which skill each of these three will likely choose to redeem in real life at level 10? Alex curiously asked Oasis's artificial intelligence. Hey, Oasis, have you figured out which skill each of these three will likely choose to redeem in real life at level 10? According to traits they have demonstrated so far, the skills most likely to be chosen are: Steve Rogers will likely choose Purify, which removes a disease effect, considering how worried he is about Peggy Carter's Alzheimer's. Pietro Maximoff has three possible abilities to choose from: Stealth, which will allow him to remain disguised in the environment at the cost of 50% of his movement speed; Sprint, which will increase his speed by 50% for 15 seconds; or Backstab, which increases damage caused by a dagger to the back by 50%. Wanda Maximoff has shown more interest in ice magic than the other two specializations, so she will probably choose Frost Nova, which in addition to dealing damage, also freezes targets in place for 6 seconds, or Frost Armor, which creates a small barrier of ice in the skin in addition to slowing down enemies that attack her in this state. According to my calculations, both Wanda and Pietro will choose the best combat-focused skills, while Steve will probably specialize in support skills for now, but will possibly start choosing offensive skills after the first battle he participates in the real world against more powerful beings. Currently he still thinks he is one of the most powerful people on Earth. Listening to Oasis' analysis, Alex was surprised, not by Wanda and Pietro's choices, as that was expected for him, but the surprise came from Steve's choice. If he can cure Peggy's Alzheimer's, will the two of them work together? Alex wondered worriedly. This small possibility will possibly change the future of the planet a lot, considering that Peggy is a fundamental part of Steve. This could bring both positive and negative changes to the world. Considering that there are even more powerful skills in the game, the future really is very uncertain. Alex thought as he smiled excitedly at what he could see. But unlike Alex, who was excited, the Ancient One was looking at the future changing again through the eye of Agamotto and started to get even more worried. Every time she looked at the future it changed again, and just when she thought she could do something to solve a catastrophic future, another change came and corrected it again. Then she calmed down and everything changed again for bad, thus creating a cycle where she couldn't. I had an idea of what to do to maintain the future in a good way. It all started with just not releasing games and slightly changing the timeline. Now with the other games the timeline is completely messed up, she thought worriedly, but what scared her the most was a thought that came next. Using Agamotto's eye, she began to investigate the future and try to find out what the future would be like in other realities, and what she discovered made her heart freeze. Not only is our future chaotic, but also the future of several other universes is becoming blurry, she said in shock when she saw how many universes would be affected in the future because of Notch and how chaotic the world would become. Will this be the end of all universes? She wondered lostly. Unlike the Ancient One who was desperate about the future she was seeing, the players around the world were all extremely excited about the game. For people visiting the Oasis for the first time, the biggest surprise besides how realistic it was that the human race was no longer the only race they saw there. It was as if people had stepped into a science fiction movie and were on another planet full of other different alien races walking among them. A feature that Alex added to Oasis VIP was that VIP players could use their WoW skins in Oasis, and as a huge population of Oasis was VIP, there were millions of players using the appearance of other races in Oasis. There were orcs, trolls, undeads, night elves, even gnomes and dwarfs appeared much more frequently. A post from the real-life dwarfs community even went viral with the community's thanks to Mojang, who not only included them in the game, but also showed people that being that way was normal and that they didn't need to be ashamed of being that way. Many humans put on dwarf skins because they thought the race was cool, and many real-life dwarfs put on dwarf skins too after they saw that no one cared about it or was going to treat them badly for it. In the few cases that there happened to be some type of racism towards any race or ethnicity in Oasis, the racist person would be detected immediately and banned from the game for a few days and penalized when they returned, while the victim would receive a few days of free VIP as compensation. Thus, several communities began to no longer be afraid or ashamed to appear as they really were in Oasis, and began to feel much better when they saw that their treatment there was like that of anyone else. Alex was surprised that there were even some wheelchair users who didn't want to make a character that could walk and decided to use wheelchair characters in Oasis as well. And to encourage this, Alex even made a wheelchair store where the player could buy and customize their wheelchair with several features, including removing the speed limiter, or even replacing the chair's wheels with a motor that would make the chair float. When players discovered this store, even people who didn't have disabilities in real life decided to buy personalized wheelchairs to have fun around Oasis, betting on races or inventing tricks, thus creating a new sport within the game. This inclusion that took place in Oasis completely pleased the public, and not only those who were mentioned, but also several others that the Oasis AI recommended for Alex to implement, which generated even more satisfaction among the players. Of the 72 hubs of Oasis, Alex noticed that the first 70 hubs were normal, while Hub 71 had become something like an Alliance players-only hub, while Hub 72 was dominated by Horde players, where these players were gathering to prepare for something big. 2 days ago, a Horde player managed to discover by accident how to get to the Alliance continent, and when he was leaving there after exploring, some Alliance players found him and followed him, also discovering the way to go from a continent to the other. Now with both factions knowing which way to get to the other side, the players decided it was time for war. I went to this bar last time with the girls, it was super fun. Anna said smiling as she held Alex's arm and led him in a direction towards Hub 71. Alex at that moment was on his A account, with the appearance of white hair and pointy teeth slightly similar to how he was in real life. Anna also looked very similar to how she was in real life. The biggest difference is that in Oasis she didn't need to be afraid of touching Alex, which made her, who always seemed like such a cold and distant person, to the others. In Oasis she was almost always clinging to Alex, enjoying as much physical contact as possible. Alex, with a beautiful girl holding his arm which let him feel her breasts pressing against his skin, obviously wouldn't refuse. Oasis always had a great restriction on perverted behavior when it was something that one of the two sides didn't want, but when both sides intended to do it, it was completely possible to invite another person to one's apartment and experiment with relationships in this new world. With the advantage of not being able to contract any STD, not being able to get pregnant, and being able to change your appearance very easily, this kind of thing has become quite popular among young adults. But one thing was certain, Oasis never allowed anything of that nature to be done or said near an underage player, always preventing the adult from saying it by giving a warning saying that there were children around, and if the adult insisted on saying something, or even intended to do something like that with a minor, then that player would be banned. In the end, the kids didn't even have any idea that something like this happened in the game, while the adults just kept it a secret and enjoyed it. Anna had already considered trying to have sex with Alex at Oasis, but Alex said he didn't want her first time to be like that, so he was planning something special and would make it happen in real life. Since then, Anna hasn't brought up the subject anymore and just remained excited and curious, wanting to know what Alex would do. Alex already had enough control over his mana to be able to make a thin membrane of ice between his skin and her skin, which would prevent her powers from activating and they could have sex without worrying too much, but Alex was still worried about Anna. He knew it would be her first time, and since he wanted her to have the best sensation possible, having a thin layer of ice between them for too long would inevitably decrease her sensitivity because of the low temperature and make the experience slightly worse. So Alex found another way to deal with it. Counter spell. Level 7 mage ability. 40 yards range. 2% of base mana. 24 seconds cooldown. Instant. Counters the enemy's spellcast, preventing any spell from that school of magic from being cast for 5 seconds. When Alex saw this ability, he thought about the possibility that it might work on Anna. In the game, this ability had a cooldown of 24 seconds and would only last for 5 seconds, but considering that he was the one who created this ability in the game, Alex just needed to do another similar ability and edit these values, then convert it to GP and that's it, he would have the ability. Of course, with this change the GP conversion price of the skill would probably multiply several times, mainly because he intended to increase the duration and decrease the cooldown, so for every second he changed the price would multiply, but thinking about the enemies he would face in the future. Whether for Loki who would come in the near future, for Ebony Maw, or even thinking about the world of Naruto that he would visit next, this ability would be indispensable. So Alex had auditioned. He got the normal counter spell skill for 5000 GP. In addition, he made Counter Spell 2.0, which had the cooldown reduced to 10 seconds and the duration extended to 1 minute, which increased the price of the skill to 500,000 GP. Considering that with this skill he could keep 5 people trapped without being able to use skills infinitely, Alex felt that the price was still very good. But just in case, he didn't redeem Counter Spell 2.0, as he still didn't know if it was useful on Anna. Looking at the bar that Anna had brought him to see, Alex saw a big blue flag with a golden lion on the front. The walls were made of wood and the people here were mostly dressed in medieval clothes. Even those without armor were wearing clothes that resembled clothes people wore in Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. Has People's PR reached Oasis yet? Alex asked in surprise. Yes, some players were very happy when they saw the RP tag appearing on Oasis after they requested. Now several bars, restaurants and themed inns focusing on RP are popping up. This bar is one of them. Anna explained smiling. Alex had no idea about this. Probably this PR tag being added to Oasis was something that the AI itself decided would be a good update and updated. And since it was just a small change, Alex didn't need to be notified about these small details. To better blend in with the players, Alex and Anna changed their appearance to the appearance of their night elf avatars. They were currently level 6, so they didn't have any really cool armor, and between wearing ugly armor or wearing nice casual clothes, the choice of the two was obvious. Hello couple, a table for 2. A night elf waitress approached them as she smiled and handed them each a mug of mead. Yes thanks. Alex replied smiling as he took the mug and tasted it. Each store had the ingredients and could make the drinks the way they wanted with the recipe they wanted, so trying drinks from different bars was much more fun than in real life where big brands dominated the market. After that they followed the waitress and sat down at a table. Anna looked curiously at the stage where there was a little gnome singing a song while wearing a red dress and a dwarf was playing a flute at the side to accompany the melody. Suddenly, Alex heard a conversation next to him between 2 dwarfs. Do you think we can achieve anything good by invading them? A dwarf wearing metal armor asked. I think so, although the horde seems to be poor, but have you ever seen the loot that the first player to kill an orc got? That is something that not even money can buy. The dwarf next to him who was wearing leather armor replied. No, where did you see that? What was it? The first dwarf asked curiously. Just look at the forum, it seems that a level 7 rogue gnome managed to enter the Horde continent and came face to face with a level 4 undead mage. Scared, the gnome quickly killed the undead and what he dropped was a skill blink scroll. The dwarf explained, "Are you kidding me? He got a skill. But he's a rogue, he can't use that skill, right?" "That's where you're wrong. Apparently if you kill a player from another faction, there is a small chance of dropping a scroll of some random ability from that player, and whoever is in the group of the person who killed the player can learn the ability, regardless of class that the original ability belonged to." Hearing this, not only was his friend dwarf excited, but also the other players who were listening to the conversation of these two dwarfs were surprised. After all, the dwarfs weren't talking quietly, and with the others' shouts of surprise, it was inevitable that more people be curious. Knowing that it was possible to obtain skills from other classes by killing players from the other faction, the war was getting closer and closer, mainly because the players' greed meant that the path to go to the other continent began to spread quickly. Alex, who had configured this mechanic so that players could learn the skills of other classes, after all, the game had Elder Scrolls in its name. He just had to think of a more convincing way for players to get these skills without it being too easy, with them just needing money to buy the other skills. So this idea came up. Players will be able to obtain the abilities of players from another faction that they kill, but to do so, the dead player cannot be less than 5 levels higher than the one who killed, and the group of the one who killed can only have one person more than the one killed. Victim. Of course, there were still loopholes, but with the AI that Alex developed to keep an eye on the game, it was very simple to control the drops of these things, which would keep the game fair and not just become an arena for players to kill each other. Alex also placed buffs for players who were being attacked in their region, such as Horde players on the Horde continent taking slightly less damage and dealing slightly more damage to Alliance players, as well as other small debuffs that upped the ante between players. Since when someone died on their own continent, they would lose a level, but if the player died on the opposing continent, they would not only lose a level, but also have a chance to drop equipment. Considering that players would probably need the best equipment to kill other players, if they died and lost one of their best equipment, that would be a huge loss. Thus, the balance between risk and reward was balanced, making the greed of the most ambitious and confident players lead them to invade the other continent, in addition to benefiting the weaker good players on the other continent who managed to kill the invaders. Anna also heard Dwarf's conversation and was excited. "Damn, if I had Blink I would become a perfect assassin." As Anna had also chosen the rogue class, hearing that gnome rogue got the Blink skill made even her want to go to the other continent to kill some players and try to get that skill. "Hee, you'll have the opportunity soon," Alex said as he took a piece of the roast beef the waitress had brought to their table. "What do you mean by that?" Anna asked, confused and excited as she also took a piece of the meat. "I think a war will happen soon. With the players' greed increasing, the number of invasions on both continents will only increase. If we want to remain safe, we just have to go to the cities further away from the coast, since apparently the path the players discovered was a barbel that travels between the west coast of Kalimdor and the east coast of Azeroth. Unless you don't want to be safe?" Alex asked with a smile. Anna smiled back. "Hee, how about we try?" Alex shook his head while smiling. "You know both sides will probably be waiting along the way to intercept invaders now that the news is leaking, right? You can walk invisibly since you're a rogue, but I can only turn invisible when I stand still. Our best choice it would be looking for invaders instead of invading for now, how about that?" Hearing this, Anna's eyes lit up. Yes. Knowing that he didn't have much else to do for the rest of the day, Alex decided to go with her to ESW and try his luck at getting a skill from a player. While Alex and Anna were looking for a good place to set up an ambush, Strange was in a group with 40 people in total. In front of them was a gigantic bear. Brown demonic bear, LV9 to 1-star boss. "Careful, he'll roar again," Strange shouted as he ran to hide behind a tree. When the other players heard the scream, they quickly ran to hide behind a tree as well, while others who had no place to hide, just used defensive skills to try and withstand the damage the bear would cause. If this was just a normal group with 5 tanks, 10 healers and 25 DPS, they would be able to deal with this bear much easier, but this group was very strange. There were only two races in this group, humans, who represented 80% of the players there, and gnomes, who represented the remaining 20%. But what all these players had in common was that they all had the same race. Mage. This was a group of 40 mages who were trying to deal with the powerful level 09 boss. Of course, this boss was only a 1-star boss, but it was still a monster that even with 40 players the battle was very complicated. Their luck was that in this group of 40 players, a woman had obtained a skill from an orc warrior that increased the resistance and aggro she generated, which allowed her to tank more, and a man had obtained a healing skill of a troll priest, which meant that the group of 40 mages at least had something that looked like a tank and a healer. But despite having these two, the potion consumption that this group was having was very high, to the point that even if the boss dropped a very valuable item, the players would still probably be at a loss, but they didn't care about that. Some players in the group had already started learning to become alchemists, while other players were learning other professions, which greatly reduced the cost of the potions they drank. When the boss was finally dying, Strange looked at the group's player list and saw that more than 20 players had died in the battle, which left him extremely dissatisfied. We have to find a way to improve faster, the wizard is undeterred. Strange thought as he threw a fireball and saw the big bear's body finally burning. When he approached the body to see what the monster had dropped, he was shocked by what was in front of him. A small, delicate purple coin. If it was just a coin, he wouldn't be so surprised, but what really surprised him was what was written on the coin. Guild token. Excited, Strange took the coin and inspected it. Guild token. Give this to the mayor of the city where you want to establish your guild. With this coin you will be entitled to rent an unoccupied building in the city to use as your guild's base. Ps. The building can be replaced with a better, more expensive one or a smaller, cheaper building at any time as long as there is availability. Seeing the item's description, Strange became even more excited and had to control himself from using it immediately. Without thinking much, Strange soon contacted Wong and told him the good news. Wong was so excited about Strange and also did the same thing, contacting the Ancient One and telling her what they had achieved. Even she, who had lived for hundreds of years, was excited by the news and decided to log into the game to see what this currency was like. Without the world knowing, the first guild token appeared, and soon others would also emerge, thus creating countless benefits and conflicts for the players. With the guild token in hand, Strange was unsure what would be the best choice for them. What do you think? From what I've seen, being the first guild in the game could be a huge advantage, both in terms of publicity and perhaps some hidden rewards. Strange said to the three people in front of him, Wong, Mordo and the Ancient One. The four were in a rented room in an inn in the small town they started in, as they had not yet arrived at the mission that would release them to go to Stormwind. Hearing what Strange said, both Wong and Mordo said nothing and just looked at the Ancient One waiting to hear what she was thinking, as she was the wisest among them. Yao thought for a while drinking a cup of tea. Let's separate these benefits into parts. First, how is our reputation among players currently? She asked as she looked at Strange and Wong, who were in charge of Oasis, Kamar Taj School of Magic. Wong thought for a few seconds and responded. Our reputation is quite high. Currently we already have more than 200,000 players registered on our forum and more than 50,000 players who actively study the magic of Minecraft and ESW with us in Oasis. I believe that if a player likes magic, the probability of this player coming to us is already very high. Hearing this, Yao, the Ancient One, nodded and looked at Strange. Strange had also already thought of what to say. In ESW I noticed that the number of players with the mage class is the highest among all other classes, and of these mages, most of them want to join us, since the difficulty of learning spells in ESW is a little higher than the players imagined, and with our teachings they are making rapid progress, which is attracting even more mages to want to join us. Hearing all this, Yao nodded and spoke. So among the benefits we can receive from using this token now, the reputation boost will be considerably less useful to us, as our reputation is already extremely high. Strange, Wong, and Mordo nodded in agreement with her. Now what we have left is to use this token now and possibly receive some useful reward from the game, or wait until we go to the capital and use it there, where we can get a better place for the guild. She said. Which is more advantageous for us in the long run? Strange didn't think twice and responded a little disappointed. Wait until we go to the capital. Yao smiled as he handed Strange the token back. Take your time, we have plenty of time. I know it would make you prouder to use this token now and show the world that we were the first, but won't it be better if we use it at the right time and reap many more benefits? Strange hesitated a bit and finally nodded. Let's continue with our previous plan. Yao said. We will continue leveling up and doing missions, while the hunting party will try to obtain other skills by hunting horde players to have the most functional team possible. Of course, if a screenshot appeared on our forum with the guild token, that would be fine. That we can't handle will happen. Hearing this, Strange's eyes lit up. Right. I can post that we already have the token, and this way we will gain the reputation of being the first to achieve this, thus attracting even more players to join our school. Strange thought excitedly. Even if greedy players appeared trying to get their token, when were they afraid of battles? The wizard is unmatched. When the news broke that the Kamar Taj School of Magic had gotten a guild token, the other big groups went crazy trying to get guild tokens as well, as unlike the School of Magic, which already had the name, recognition and knowledge that they used to attract players, the other big groups only had money, so they needed to sweat their money to hire more players and get the guild token as quickly as possible. Thus, a large influx of money was injected into ESW, intended for players to try to get the guild token. Unfortunately, they still hadn't figured out how the School of Magic got the guild token, so they had to spread these funds to players in different areas to try their luck. The only group that wasn't so worried about this was the group led by Shuri, the guild that would be called Black Panther in the future, as the players of that guild would just be the real-life residents of Wakanda, so they didn't need to worry with the publicity that getting a guild token early on would bring them. One change that ESW brought to Mojang was that now not only were the owners of large groups injecting money as investment into this world, but these people were also playing Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. Tony Stark already played the other games, but in ESW he was incredibly shocked when he discovered that he could take on the engineering profession, and he even stopped leveling up for a few days to focus on learning ESW engineering. T'Challa, who hadn't played the other Mojang games, was now playing ESW and had a lot of fun with the game. Especially when he talked to a Night Elf NPC and discovered that at level 20 he could unlock an ability that would literally transform him into a Black Panther. When he told this to his friends in Wakanda, T'Challa was shocked to discover that almost 90% of Wakandan players chose the Druid class because they wanted to fulfill their dream of becoming a Black Panther. Initially he was worried about this development, as having almost all players using just a single class could be bad for a group's overall strength, but Shuri had some good news for him. Don't worry, brother, don't you know about the School of Magic? They are a group of mages who don't accept anything other than mages in their group. To get around the deficiency of not having tanks and healers, they are forming groups to kill players of the Horde and get the tank skills that their group lacks. We can just do the same thing and form groups so that our druids can also get skills that we lack. Hearing this, T'Challa's eyes lit up. Yes, this will be great, so everyone can keep the class they want while still having powerful groups with all the skills we need. This reasoning did not only arise in this group, but several other groups that were focused on just one class thought the same thing, which caused the dust between the two factions to only increase, causing the upcoming war to become even worse, more imminent. That was exactly the reason Alex added this option to the game. If a player doesn't want to get involved in this, it's simple, the player just has to level up on the other side of the continent, which saving money to pay for a griffin after a few days is not impossible, and for players who like of battles, let them battle. The better these players' combat experience is now, when they get the skills in real life, it will make these people even more powerful to deal with the coming invasion. I don't know what to say about your luck. Alex laughed as he shook his head and looked at the beautiful night elf jumping with happiness next to him as she shook a book written Blink. The beautiful night elf quickly opened the book and read the skill description. When she finished reading the last word, the book turned into particles of light and disappeared, causing a new skill to appear on her menu skill list. Blink, Anna said excitedly. As soon as she said blink, her body disappeared from where it was and she appeared again 10 yards ahead. Looking around and recognizing where she was, Anna was confused. What was wrong? The ability said I could teleport up to 20 yards away, but I could only teleport 10. She asked Alex without understanding what happened. Seeing this, Alex laughed. That's common, you know about the proficiency level, right? Anna nodded. When you learn a skill from your class, this proficiency comes with a value close to 100, which you can train and improve this up to, say, 200 proficiency. I can't say if there is a maximum. He said and looked at her, seeing if she was following. Seeing her nod again, Alex continued. When you learn a skill from another class, as it is not something you are used to doing because it is a different class, this value should be around 50, instead of the 100 that comes from a skill from your own class, so you'll have to study this skill more and train it more so that the skill reaches the 100 that mages can use naturally or even pass it and make you better than mages. Hearing this, Anna finally understood. I understand, so I'm going to use Blink a lot to use this in the best way possible. Anna said as she excitedly looked at the skill's cooldown, wanting to use it again to learn it as quickly as possible. Just be sure to pay close attention while using this, as the better you understand the skill, the faster you'll improve. Alex gave a tip that few players have noticed so far. Hearing this, Anna just nodded. If it were at the beginning, she might even be a little surprised that Alex knew so much about something like that, but over time she got used to his knowledge and just thought that he was probably a hardcore player who studied the game all the time and that he wasn't playing. Hey babe, are you free tonight? Alex asked as he came closer to her and hugged her slim waist. Anna was surprised and looked at Alex with shining eyes. Yes, where do you want to go? Unlike the gothic and withdrawn personality she had before, being able to interact with people by touching them in addition to the affection that Alex gave her during the last few months had a great impact on her personality. Only the style of clothes she wore hadn't changed much, since she both liked that style of clothes, and knowing that Alex thought she looked hot in that style encouraged her even more to keep her wardrobe the same. I learned a new magic and I wanted to show you. How about I bring you to my house so we can test it? Alex asked with a smile. Hearing this, Anna was initially quite curious, as she had never been to her house and didn't know what it was like, but when she thought that he had learned a new spell and was calling her so they could apparently be alone at home, her cheeks quickly turned red. Should it be just the two of us? She asked a little shyly as she hid her head on his chest. Yep, just the two of us, all night. Alex said as he hugged her. Hearing this, Anna's heart sped up even more. She'd wanted to do this kind of thing with Alex for a while, and if he was confident in trying out this new magic of his, there was a chance it would actually work. Not only could she kiss and do other things with him physically, it could even improve her life in the real world even more. So, I'm going to leave the game now to get ready, pick me up in 3 hours, okay? She said excitedly and shyly, not really knowing how to react. Alex saw her reaction and smiled as he walked over to her and placed a kiss on her mouth. Okay babe, I'll pick you up in 3 hours. Anna turned even redder and quickly logged out of the game, without even waiting for the 20 seconds of safety, leaving her character sitting on the floor lifeless. Alex looked at the disconnected character and laughed as he stood alert to the side to protect her character for another 20 seconds until she finally disappeared. With that, he also disconnected from the game and went home to get ready. He had already rescued the common skill, Spell Lock, and would first test it on Anna. If it really worked, he would rescue the 2.0 version. If it didn't work, he would leave it to rescue it in the future and use the current GP with other things. Since Alex wanted to make this night special, he dressed up in a different set of clothes than he normally wore. Instead of the techwear style outfit he normally wore, this time Alex chose a more formal outfit and wore a black dress shirt, as well as black pants and white sneakers. On his wrist was a beautiful watch that mixed technology and sophistication, looking much more luxurious than the various Patek Philippe watches that were recognized for luxury and sophistication. Both the clothes and the watch were redeemed by GP in the system, costing just over 100 GP, since besides being beautiful, these things were useless. Alex even thought about buying some of these watches to sell in the real world and spend the money in the game at some point, but the system issued a warning that only the player's money would be converted into GP, so he gave up on the idea and just kept the watch. For yourself. With 2.5 hours notice, Alex asked B to change the appearance of the GTR he normally used to meet Anna, to a car he had seen in his previous world, which did not yet exist in this world. To make it easier for B to understand, Alex entered the Oasis and used the template creation tool to model the car perfectly as he remembered it. Within seconds a car was between Alex and B in Oasis. How about B, do you think you can transform into this car? Alex asked smiling. B was surprised while looking at this car. Is that a Ferrari? Yep, this is a Ferrari that hasn't been released yet, to be more precise, Ferrari's first SUV. I thought that using a car like this would be more comfortable for Anna than a low and cramped sports car. Since it's a Ferrari, it will be sporty, beautiful, fast and, as it is an SUV, comfortable. Alex explained. B nodded in understanding and began scanning the car. Of course I can do it, Alex, despite the appearance being very different, the cars on this planet are still not that far behind compared to me. When Alex saw B disconnecting from Oasis, he also quickly disconnected, and when he left the house he saw, in front of his house, parked was Ferrari's first SUV, a Purosang yellow Ferrari. Excited, Alex smiled as he got into the car and started driving towards his apartment in Bayville. He had bought this apartment a while ago, in case he wanted a place to be alone with Anna. This apartment finally came in handy. Even though the apartment was purchased a few weeks ago, which wasn't that long ago, the apartment was not empty, as Alex chose this apartment because it was already furnished. With the earnings he made from gaming, spending $1 million or $2 USD wasn't a big deal to him, especially considering that this was only 5,000 GP after the conversion, so spending so little for a comfortable and practical apartment didn't seem like a waste, for him. Some time ago he was already starting to renovate the wooden cabin he had lived in for a few months to become a more pleasant and comfortable place, but although the cabin had already become much better, Alex still did not intend to take Anna there. Since there was practically his safe place, he still needed some more time to take someone he trusted there. For now he just intended to bring Anna to the Bayville apartment. Maybe I can use the mage's ability to portal in the real world to come to the apartment directly. Alex asked himself mentally. In ESW, from level 20 mages would start to learn skills where they could open portals around the world. Just like Kamar Taj's portals, mages could open portals to the game's largest cities. If I learn this skill in the real world, maybe I can open portals to anywhere. I'll just need to change some settings and that will be quite possible. Alex thought excitedly, saving this idea for the future. Seeing that it was time to go get Anna, Alex went to the garage and saw that B was connected to the Oasis, since in the Ferrari's multimedia panel, the Mojang launcher was connected to the game. Are you in a match, B? Alex asked as he opened the door and sat down. I'm hunting a group of boars in Nomergon, do you need me? B replied distractedly while still maintaining control of the game. Nah, I'm going to pick up Anna, I'll drive, okay. Just hide the Mojang launcher from the multimedia screen so she can't see it. Alex replied. Okay, if you need me, just call, you can drive in peace. B replied as he turned his attention back to the game. As an alien species made of advanced technology, connecting to the internet without a 4G chip was very simple, which allowed B to play Oasis without the need for a computer, as it was theoretically already a great computer. Just as the Transformers were unconscious in the films, but still maintained the functionality of a normal car, B was also able to allow control of his car form while his consciousness entered Oasis, which was very useful for both of them. Both for Alex, who would always have the car available, and for B, who could play all the time without worrying about having to stop playing to help Alex. Even though he didn't mind helping Alex, it was still a bit annoying to spend hours in a parking lot. Unlike the GTR that Alex normally used to drive to the mansion, which was extremely noisy, the Ferrari Purosangue was much quieter. Although it still made noise when accelerating, when the engine revs were low the car was much quieter. So when Alex arrived at mansion, Aurora, who was the one who answered the intercom, when she saw the yellow car she thought it was Alex, but as it was a different car model, she still asked, "Hello, who is it?" Alex smiled as he rolled down the window further and showed his face. "Hi Aurora, it's me, Alex, I came to pick up Anna for our date today." Confirming that it was Alex, Aurora also smiled and opened the gate for him to enter. When Alex drove up to the mansion's entrance, Anna was already there waiting for him. Looking out the window, Alex even swallowed hard seeing how beautiful she looked. Her short hair was a few centimeters longer, as she wanted to change her style a little recently, which caused her hair to come down a little from shoulder length, almost reaching her breasts. Her body was hugged by a beautiful green dress, which matched perfectly with her dark makeup and dark hair, further highlighting her white skin that was rarely touched by anyone. This dress fitted around her body highlighted her breasts even more, which despite not being exaggeratedly large, were a perfect size and had a beautiful curvature. Not to mention her waist, which without the baggy clothes she normally wore, now, just like on the day at the pool, it was clear how well she took care of that waist, which made a perfect shape with the slightly larger hips she had because of her thighs were a little thicker and her ass was slightly bigger. To top it off, she was wearing long black gloves on her hands and black socks on her feet, which both protected those around her and also made her even more stunning. Join the Discord to see the visual representation, discord.gg/NunuXD. I'm glad I came in black. Alex thought seeing that his clothes were matching her clothes very well. Stopping the car in front of her, Alex got out with a smile and elegantly came to her side. His white hair contrasted very well with his black clothes and matched perfectly with the white sneakers he was wearing, creating a great mix of sophistication and youthfulness. Seeing how Alex was, Anna didn't react any differently than he did when he saw her the first time. Alex had never dressed so well when going out with her, so seeing him in clothes like that was breathtaking. His face seemed to get more and more beautiful every time she saw him, mainly because of his elven breathing, which she didn't know about. His body was gaining more muscle, which his slightly tight dress shirt highlighted even more, making his appearance even more attractive. Not to mention that she was even happier when she saw him looking at her body like that, since that was exactly why she had dressed like that. "You look like a beautiful vampire with that white hair, red eyes and black outfit," she said happily as she came to his side and held his hand, since she was wearing gloves and the part of her shoulder that touched him only touched his clothes. Alex smiled at her comment and replied, "And you look like a beautiful snake in that green outfit, very elegant and charming." Hearing his comment, Anna smiled and got close to his ear saying, "That snake rubs itself very well," she said as she hugged him from the side and made her breasts rub against his arm. Alex began to feel a reaction down below and responded back in a low voice in her ear. "And this vampire wants to bite you all over," he said as he lowered it to her neck and made a thin layer of cold mana on the skin of her neck and bit down, which made Anna freeze for a second and let out a slight moan. Scared by what she did, Anna quickly moved away from him a little and looked to the side, trying to hide what just happened and find another topic. But Alex wouldn't let it end like this, he was determined that tonight he would end it. Looking at the Purosangue Ferrari behind Alex, Anna was shocked. Although the GTR is a very expensive car, the price and weight that the Nissan brand had was very different from a Ferrari. Anna had researched Alex's GTR and knew it was an expensive car, and with the customizations Alex made, it was even possible to buy a house depending on the place, so she knew he was rich, but seeing as he came to pick her up with another extremely expensive car, and this time it was a Ferrari, left her even more shocked. "Is that your new car?" she asked, a little excited and a little worried. Alex saw her concern and smiled. "That's another car, the GTR is still with me." Hearing that Alex still had the GTR, Anna finally became more relaxed, as Alex's GTR was so powerful that she loved the feeling of adrenaline rushing around the city with Alex driving at high speed. This was such a good adrenaline rush that she didn't feel even in battles against the Brotherhood's mutants. No longer worrying that Alex had sold the GTR, Anna now started to observe the Ferrari, and the more she looked, the more satisfied she became. "This car is so beautiful, I've never seen it before," she said, impressed as she looked at this strange combination of Ferrari and SUV. "I thought it would be more comfortable for you if I came to pick you up in a taller, more comfortable car rather than a low sports car, mainly because of that," Alex said as he pointed to the heels on her feet. Seeing Alex's concern, Anna smiled genuinely. Getting into the car with the door that Alex opened for her, Anna was amazed looking around and seeing how beautiful the interior of this car was. She had never been in a Ferrari before, so seeing how sporty this interior was shocked her. Compared to the GTR's interior, which was like a rocket, with a more square layout and lots of buttons, the Ferrari's interior was more refined and sporty, which made it seem like she was in a futuristic spaceship, or whatever she wanted. "I had in my imagination what the interior of a Formula One car would be like." Alex just smiled and shook his head as he got into the car and drove with Anna out of the mansion, ignoring the burning gazes that watched them from the windows. He had noticed some curious eyes looking at him, and even his hearing enhanced by elven breath heard a sigh from a familiar voice as he bit Anna's neck, but Alex just ignored that and enjoyed the moment with his girlfriend. "What did you prepare for us?" Anna asked curiously, trying to figure out what Alex did. "Surprise," Alex responded with a smile as he put some relaxing music on the radio and continued driving. Anna saw that he wanted to keep it a mystery and stayed quiet, only increasing her inner anticipation. Since Bayville was a relatively small town, Alex arrived at the apartment quickly. To Anna's astonishment, the building where he lived was not as luxurious as she imagined. Looking from the outside, it was a medium to high standard building, but nothing exaggerated like those buildings she saw on television. Arriving at the door of Alex's apartment, he smiled at her and asked her to wait outside for a few seconds, which she did enthusiastically. Taking advantage of her being out, Alex lit the candles he had left on the floor using the magic of controlling the basic elements, making a path of candles that led to the dining table, which had 2 plates and a box of chocolates that he had bought it for her. The food was still in the oven, which he took out and quickly served on both plates, making the atmosphere even more romantic. 40 seconds later, with everything ready, Alex left the apartment and closed the door, letting Anna go in front and see everything firsthand. "You can come in, my princess," he said in a loving voice, making her smile even bigger. When she opened the door and saw the beautiful path of candles that led to a romantic table in the middle of the room, Anna's heart stopped for a few seconds. Her eyes started to burn until she couldn't take it anymore and some tears came out. Turning around, Anna saw Alex at the door looking at her with a beautiful smile on his face. Without thinking, she quickly ran up to him and kissed him. Alex saw that she was coming this way and didn't have much time to prepare to use ice magic to make the layer between them to protect the two, so he could only use spell lock. Fortunately, when Anna's warm lips touched his, no pain came, only pleasure rose to their minds. This was the first time they kissed without that cold feeling that ice magic left, which made the kiss much more satisfying. When Anna felt that the kiss didn't have the cold sensation, the first thing she instinctively wanted to do was put her tongue inside Alex's mouth, but she soon woke up and opened her eyes worried about how Alex would have felt with this kiss. Fortunately, in front of her, Alex was perfectly fine, and when she wanted to move away to say something, Alex took the initiative to stick his tongue into her mouth. Feeling his warm tongue entering her mouth, Anna began to feel her body tingle as she enjoyed the sensation. At this point, feeling that the spell lock worked, Alex didn't think twice and with a mental command, he bought spell lock 2.0 and immediately used it on Anna, causing her power to be deactivated for 1 minute. With the certainty that the skill was working, Alex became bolder and placed his hand on the part of her white thigh that was exposed between her dress and pantyhose, making Anna freeze once again and look at him in shock during the kiss. which made Alex smile and give her a small bite on the lip, making her legs a little weaker. Taking advantage of the moment, Alex, who had one hand holding the back of Anna's head and the other on her thigh, began to raise his hand, making her dress rise with it, until his hand grabbed that beautiful ass. Ever since he saw her wearing the swimsuit at the pool party at the ex-mansion, Alex felt like squeezing that ass of hers, but at that time he couldn't, and since that day Anna hasn't worn such a revealing outfit as she does today. Taking advantage of the fact that she was wearing every man's favorite outfit, Alex smiled as he lifted her dress even higher and squeezed every inch of her ass with pleasure. "What a delicious ass," Alex said with pleasure as he enjoyed the sensation her body was giving his hand, which made Anna go even crazier. Feeling Alex's hand squeezing her ass made her pleasure rise exponentially. No one had ever touched her like this because of her powers, so everything she was experiencing today was considered a first for her. For someone who had at most given a simple kiss to another person, just kissing her with tongue would be enough for her to never forget it, but with the hand of Alex, the man she loves, squeezing her ass, Anna was already starting to not be able to think straight. Ignoring the dining table, Anna saw a couch next to the door and quickly pulled Alex towards it. Alex understood what she wanted and also went towards the sofa while watching her walk in front of him with half of her ass hanging out of her dress, which was making him even more horny. When they finally reached the couch, Alex was about to lift her dress when she held his hand and looked at him worriedly. "I spent so long putting on makeup that I forgot to shave. Is everything okay?" "I only shaved last week and some hairs started to grow," Anna said a little embarrassed. Alex just smiled at her and spoke. "Don't worry, I like you the way you are, this just turns me on even more." Hearing this, Anna finally let go of Alex's hand and let him continue, finally lifting her dress and leaving her entire body exposed for him to see. Nunu note: the next chapter will be AR-18 with explicit visual representations exclusive for Patreon without any importante lore for the story. If you wanna read, feel free to join us there. "So, how did you manage to ignore my powers?" Anna asked as she stuffed some of the pork ribs she was eating into her mouth. Alex, who was sitting next to her on the bed, finished swallowing the piece of meat he was eating and responded. "I managed to create a spell that blocks a person's use of other spells." Hearing this, Anna's eyes lit up. "How long does this last?" Alex sighed and replied, "Unfortunately it only lasts 1 minute. So I have to use this skill for between 50 and 60 seconds on you so that your powers are deactivated." Hearing this, Anna was a little disappointed, but she was still happy that at least around Alex she would be able to be like a normal person. "Does this have any limitations?" she asked worriedly as she ate another piece of the meat. Alex shook his head. "Not much, the amount of mana this uses is a bit high, but with my high mana regeneration rate I could use this infinitely." The smile on Anna's face was radiant as she ate the meat even more eagerly. This meat was the romantic dinner that Alex had made for them, but as it was interrupted for a long time, they had to heat the food again, and as Anna was very tired and a little sore, as it was her first time, Alex took a stand and took it so they could eat it in the room, lying on the bed. It would be a really cute scene if the two weren't naked at that moment, but they were both enjoying it a lot. Both Anna looking at Alex's lightly muscled chest, and Alex looking at her white breasts. Seeing that the two were looking at each other's bodies, they laughed and had to control themselves not to start another round. As Anna was very weak, she decided that she would sleep at Alex's house with him, which for him was no problem. They just had to be careful not to touch each other while they were sleeping, since during sleep Alex couldn't use counterspell on Anna, which made it a bit dangerous. But as they were already so tired and the bed was very big, the two made a small barrier of blankets in the middle of the bed and managed to sleep well without touching each other. When Alex woke up and saw that beautiful view of Anna's bare ass pointed at him, he didn't think twice and used counterspell on her and gave a small bite to that beautiful ass, making her let out a slight scared moan and thrust her ass towards him. Again. Seeing how she was acting, Alex just smiled and started again. When Alex dropped Anna off at the ex-mansion for the afternoon, Anna was quickly surrounded by the other curious girls when she entered her room. Tell me how it was, Anna. Kitty said excitedly. What did you do? Amara also asked excitedly. Jean also came over curiously, but didn't ask anything, just looked at Anna expectantly. Hearing the girl's question, Anna was a little shy but told the basics of what they did. He invited me to his apartment and made a candlelit dinner for us. It was very beautiful, especially the candle path he made that led to the table. Hearing this, the girls became even more excited, imagining what this would be like. Excitedly, they started asking about everything, even about why he had a different car, which Anna was able to answer without any problems. Until Kitty asked a question. And you did that? Hearing Kitty's question, the girls became quiet and Anna froze. Seeing Anna's reaction, they already knew the answers, but seeing her nod, it made them all shocked. You guys did that, with his ice magic? Amara asked this time. Even Jean was a little shy to hear this kind of thing, but she was very curious since she had never experienced anything like this. But to the girls' surprise, Anna shook her head. No, he studied a magic that can cancel my powers. Hearing this, Kitty was shocked and tried to reach out to touch Anna's neck, but Anna soon held Kitty's hand with her gloves and shook her head. That magic of his only works when I'm with him, so now I can't be touched anymore. A little disappointed, Kitty decided to ask about what was making her very curious. So you did, skin to skin? Kitty asked as she felt her face get very hot. Even Amora and Jean were very shy about Kitty's question, feeling that it was a very personal question, but they couldn't deny that they also wanted to know the answer. Anna's white skin turned redder than Kitty's, but she managed to nod her head positively. Seeing Anna's response, the girls screamed excitedly and embarrassedly, not even knowing what to say. Anna only had the courage to answer this kind of thing because they were her only friends and they were in her room. If it weren't for that, she would never say something like that. And was it good? Amora finally asked. This time Anna not only shook her head but also spoke in a low voice. It was the best feeling I've ever felt in my life. Hearing this, the girls' imaginations began to run wild, imagining what Alex could have done so well to make Anna feel this reaction. And with the girls' imagination going so far, the one who suffered from this was Jean, who didn't have very good control over her powers, started listening to Kitty and Amara's imagination, which made her a little embarrassed, but what it embarrassed her even more, it was a bit of Anna's mind that she overheard without meaning to. And what she accidentally heard from Anna's mind was enough to make her even feel a little breathless as she widened her eyes in surprise. Realizing that she almost let the other girls realize that she couldn't control her powers well and could hear their minds, Jean looked to the side and started trying to think about other things. But she couldn't forget Anna's mental description of the sensation she felt with Alex's cock entering her and how pleasurable it was. Would this magic that Alex did to deactivate Anna's powers also work on me? Jean asked herself a little anxiously. Although it is somewhat useful to be able to know what people were thinking from time to time, at times like this it was quite unpleasant. Especially now, when she was dying of shame because she was thinking about the feeling her friend had with her boyfriend's dick inside her. Dash 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 dash. What is that? Pietro was confused when he saw a message in front of him. Congratulations on reaching level 10, you have unlocked the skill redeem option. Hey, Wanda, did you get that notification too? Pietro looked at his sister confused. Wanda nodded. Yes, what is this, skill redeem? Will we be able to choose a new skill? She asked, also confused. That's strange, I saw that we could buy new skills from the NPCs of our classes, but I didn't see anything about this, skill redeem. Pietro said without understanding. Not knowing what to do, he decided to open the Help tab. Hi Silver, how can I help? ESW Malfurian admin. I just reached level 10 and a window appeared in front of me saying that I unlocked something called Skill Redeem, but I don't know what it is. Is there a guide that can explain it to me, Silver? Yes, there is a guide, but this functionality is very simple. If you access your character menu, a new functionality has appeared for you there called Skill Redeem. All the information is available there. Winking face ESW Malfurian admin. Thank you very much, Silver. I'm surprised by how helpful Mojang's customer service is, Pietro said in surprise. Whenever he needed to contact Mojang's help service, he was always helped without having to wait in line, and every time by a real person who was able to solve his problem quickly. Of course, what he didn't know was that his attendant wasn't a real person, but, in fact, an artificial intelligence. Wanda, the admin said that we just need to open our character menu and there will be a skill redeem option. He said as he opened his menu and looked at that option. Wanda also did the same thing. When she read the instructions on how it worked, she was shocked. Skill redeem. Every 10 levels the player can request a skill that their character learned in the game to learn in real life. Different skills will have different cooldowns to redeem in real life. All skills can be redeemed for free, but the waiting time can be accelerated with Oasis coins, the currency used in Oasis. Seeing this explanation, both Wanda and Pietro were incredulous. Wanda, is this true? Pietro asked, not knowing what to say. I guess so. Do you remember the golden apple? She said. Thinking about what Wanda said, Pietro finally remembered. Although they hadn't played Minecraft, they learned about the golden apple that appeared as a Hunger Games reward in Minecraft, which was initially something simple to get. Over time and the hundreds of millions of people starting to play the game, became something almost impossible to achieve. Countries even began to fight over who could get the most golden apples from their soldiers as a form of honor for the nation. If they can make the golden apples, can they make us learn the skills in real life too? He asked while getting excited. We know this is possible, right? She said as she motioned to him. He immediately understood the signal and knew that she was talking about the skills they already had in real life. How about we test it? Pietro said as he started looking at his list of skills, thinking about which one he would choose. Wait, it says you can only choose one skill every 10 levels, so we can only choose one skill now. We have to think about it better. She said worriedly, making Pietro feel a little discouraged. How about we go to the NPC that sells skills and buy the best skill for level 10, that way we can be sure to choose the best skill possible. Pietro said. That makes sense. Wait just a second, let me look for something. She said as she began searching the menu for additional information. Until she finally found it. Apparently you can only choose a skill from level 1 to level 10, and then a skill from level 11 to level 20, and so on. In other words, it won't do much good if we save our choices in the future, unless that. She didn't finish as she read more, making Pietro anxious. Unless what? He asked. Unless we gain more points in some event, but they don't say which event would give us these points to choose more skills. Maybe that's something in the future. She said. Seeing that it wasn't something that would be useful now, Pietro just ignored it and grabbed his sister's hand as he dragged her towards the NPC selling skills, wanting to see what new skill they could learn at level 10. Not only were they very surprised by this level 10 news, the other level 10 player was also very shocked by it. Steve Rogers had no doubts when he unlocked this functionality and instantly chose the Purify skill. Although there were other skills that were more useful in combat, such as attack skills, or healing skills, the skill he wanted most was Purify, which removed one poisoning effect and one disease from the target ally. When he reached level 8 and purchased this skill, the first thing he thought was how great it would be if he could achieve this skill in real life, but who knew he would actually have the chance to achieve this. When the chance came, Steve quickly chose it and looked at his cooldown number. Purify LV8 Q position, 01 estimated time, 1 minute. As Steve was the only player converting skills, his cooldown was short, just 1 minute, but when the other players reached level 10, this time would probably increase to a maximum of 30 days. With billions of players playing, the probability that this waiting time will exceed 30 days is very high, so Alex set a limit that every month there would only be X number of slots for players to be able to learn skills in the real world for free, which was proportional to the amount of GP allocated for that month. These vacancies would be renewed on the first of each month and the players who were faster would be able to learn their skills. As leveling is very slow, Players would probably take more than 30 days to rise from level 10 to level 20, and this time would only increase from level 20 to level 30. So although the number of players is large, those players' level they will not come back every month to get a place in line if they have already learned the skills they wanted. Of course, Alex wouldn't waste money either, so he put an option where the player can pay to learn the skill instantly without consuming space in the free queue, but this value is extremely high since the skills consume a lot of GP. An explanation was also left saying that teaching these skills consumes a lot of company resources, so the free quota is limited and there is an option for people to spend money to be able to learn instantly, since that person is paying for the resources they will use. When the time finally reached 0 seconds, Steve quickly logged out of Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. At that moment the only thing he could think of was running to the hospital where Peggy was admitted and using that to cure her as quickly as possible. But when Steve was about to leave his room at SHIELD headquarters, as soon as he opened the door, he ran into Nick Fury. "Fury?" Steve asked confused, since Fury had been coming to his room for some time. "Hello Captain, congratulations on reaching level 10. Fury said with a small smile. He was surprised to see that Steve was so invested in ESW, especially when they informed him that Steve was currently top 1 in the highest level ranking. So he came to Steve with a proposal, but seeing Steve leaving the room, something very rare, aroused his curiosity. "Thanks Fury, do you mind taking me to the hospital Peggy is at, again?" Steve asked a little awkwardly. Fury raised his eyebrow in surprise, but still nodded. "Of course, but do you mind telling me why? If I'm not mistaken, you already went to see her this week, right?" Fury asked as he started walking towards the SHIELD garage. Steve nodded and responded excitedly. "Yes, but after I reached level 10 in ESW, the game let me learn a skill in real life, and I chose to learn the Paladin's Purify skill. This skill can cure a person's illness, so I decided to test if it will work to help Peggy." But unlike Steve's excitement, when Nick heard this his heart almost stopped. "What did you say? You learned an ESW skill in real life?" Nick asked shocked, losing his composure for the first time in front of Steve. Steve was surprised by Fury's change in attitude, but when he finally thought about the consequences it would have, he understood why Nick acted the way he did. As he was so focused on helping Peggy, it didn't even cross his mind what this meant for humanity, but now that Fury had awakened him, Steve was shocked. "Yes, I learned a skill that can apparently cure any disease," Steve replied shocked. The two stood in the hallway, staring at each other for a few seconds, when Fury woke up and started walking even faster towards the garage. "We have to test whether this really works urgently. Have you tested the skill yet?" Nick asked. Steve also started to follow him, walking quickly. "I haven't tested it yet, but since I left the game, I have the feeling that I can use this skill just like in the game. It's like I went to school, learned how to multiply, and now that I'm outside of school I can multiply as if I always knew that." Nick was shocked by this, but he soon saw a problem. "But if I'm not mistaken, paladins need mana to use skills, right? Do you have mana in real life?" When Steve heard this he was scared. I don't know." Nick nodded and responded. "Testing will need to be carried out." As they walked, Nick raised his hand to his ear and issued an order. "All combat agents in ESW, change your focus to leveling up as quickly as possible. I want all agents focused on combat to be at level 10 within 4 days, while agents focused on crafting, focus on leveling up. Level 2. Hearing Nick's order, Steve became curious. Do the crafting jobs also have some reward for leveling up? Nick just shook his head. No one imagined that reaching level 10 would unlock this possibility, so from now on it's best to treat ESW as if anything were possible. Thinking that ordinary people would possibly learn the game's skills made Fury feel a headache coming on, as people wouldn't just use these skills for good, and it would probably become his responsibility to think of a way to deal with these skills. People. What Fury didn't know is that Oasis already had a system to check a person's morality, and as long as the person had their morality assessment score below a baseline, that person wouldn't get the ability for real life. That would be a risky thing to do, but Alex had no other choice. He would not make the game's powers available to people to do evil, since the more chaotic the society, the less GP he would gain, since people would have other priorities. So even if people knew they were being scrutinized for their actions in the game, it's not like people would care. In Alex's previous world, everyone complained that they were being spied on, but they still continued to use social media, accepting cookies on the internet or allowing applications to analyze their interests to send targeted advertisements. Even though people complained, they still accepted it, and for Alex that was enough. He was already doing a lot of good for humanity. This detail wouldn't change Mojang's image, especially since this was being used so that bad people wouldn't receive the abilities in real life, so this would probably be seen as a good thing that people would thank him. What Fury didn't know is that while he issued this warning to SHIELD agents, this information was also passed on to all Hydra agents around the world. Even though Hydra didn't know the reason for leveling up with such importance, they still knew that Fury didn't do something for no reason, and they also began to implement this. They just didn't know that the vast majority of their agents wouldn't be able to learn any skills in real life. Arriving in Peggy's room, Steve was a little sad to see how old she had gotten, but fortunately that feeling was soon replaced by happiness as he imagined that he could possibly have a conversation with her that would last longer than 5 minutes. Despite being elderly and weakened, Peggy's agent instincts weren't completely rusty yet, so when she heard someone's footsteps entering her room, she quickly woke up and looked at the person. Looking at the face of those who entered, Peggy was shocked. "Steve, are you still alive?" she said, shocked. Hearing what she said, Steve's nose began to burn as he controlled himself from crying again. Every time he came to her, she always said this, even several times a day. Today will be different, Steve thought excitedly as he smiled. "Hi Peggy, yes I'm alive," he said as he reached out to hold her hand. "It's been so long," she said as she started to cry, just like she did every time. But this time, Steve remembered the feeling of using Purify in ESW and started doing the same thing in real life. To the surprise of Steve and Fury, who was watching on the side, Steve's hand suddenly began to glow with a golden light. The intensity of the glow increased so much that even Peggy, who was crying, was shocked by it, especially when a warm sensation began to spread from her hand that was touching the light all over her body. This sensation spread throughout her body, until it finally reached her head, causing a small itch to appear for a second in her head, and suddenly a lot of memories began to come back to her. Seeing Peggy's abnormal reaction, Steve became worried and asked, "Peggy, are you okay?" Peggy heard this and looked at Steve in surprise. Hearing this, Steve felt his heart sink, as he thought Peggy would be surprised with him here again, but what she said next left both him and Nick completely shocked. "Didn't you come here 3 days ago? Did something happen?" Peggy asked, confused. But at this moment, it was Steve who couldn't control himself and started crying while thinking. "Thank you, Notch. Do you remember what happened, Peggy?" Steve asked as he held her hand. Peggy, who was already 91 years old, looked at Steve's appearance, which was still as young as she remembered him, and sighed. "Yes, now I remember everything, just, how can I remember without Alzheimer's affecting me?" she asked in disbelief. Seeing that she remembered, Steve started to smile as he opened his hand and showed the golden particles shining in his hand. "It's magic, I learned a magic that can cure illnesses, including your Alzheimer's," Steve said as he looked at Peggy again, smiling. Seeing the way Steve was smiling at her, the way he looked at her, still with the same love he always felt, Peggy felt her heart ache. For almost 70 years she had been waiting to see that smile, to see this man in front of her, mainly, to be able to finally give him the dance she promised. Unfortunately he had disappeared, she went through so much, founded SHIELD, dealt with so much, and only now that she is over 90 years old, in a hospital bed, can't even walk on her own, that he appeared. "At least I got to see you again, Steve," Peggy said as she looked at him fondly and started to cry. What hurt her the most was that at a time when she was most fragile, it was Steve who appeared again, this time even using magic, to save and take care of her, but unfortunately she can't even go to the park with him for a walk. Seeing her reaction, Steve also felt his heart ache and could imagine why she was acting like this. But he soon thought of something and smiled. "You know I'm still waiting for that dance, right?" Hearing what he said, Peggy felt her heart hurt even more. "I don't think I can give you this dance anymore, Steve," Peggy said while crying like a little girl. "Yes you can," he said confidently. Hearing this, Peggy quickly raised her head and looked at Steve in shock. "Do you also have a magic that can rejuvenate me?" Steve chuckled as he shook his head. "Not yet, but it's not impossible if that man wants to, but the way I thought of it is you." So, Steve began to explain to Peggy about Oasis, and how it was possible to make a character however you wanted there, to the point that she could even use her appearance from when they first met. He explained that she could move normally again, and that if she wanted, she could even participate in battles and fight monsters, which left Peggy shocked. For the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., even though she hadn't been working for many years, the first thing she thought of while hearing this was how dangerous this was and how many implications it could cause. When she told Steve about this, not only did Steve laugh, but Nick, who was quiet in the corner of the room, laughed, making his presence known to Peggy. Although she was a great agent, now Peggy was only 91 years old and was already very rusty, so she didn't even notice Nick there in the room, but now that she saw him, she was shocked that she had revealed some confidential information. "Don't worry director, this information is also in my jurisdiction," Nick responded in good humor. "Director, are you a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent?" she asked a little surprised. But instead of Nick responding, Steve laughed and responded. "He's Nick Fury, the current director of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was the one who brought me to meet you after I was unfrozen." Hearing this, memories came back to Peggy's mind, mainly of Fury coming to visit her every now and then, which made her impression improve a little. While the conversation between the three was going on, Wanda and Pietro finally chose the skills they were going to learn. Pietro chose the skill Sneak, which made his body slightly translucent at the cost of decreasing his speed by 50%. But for someone like him, who could run at 4x the speed of sound, reducing that by 50% would only make him run at 2x the speed of sound, which although it seemed like a lot, wasn't that much compared to the possibility of become almost invisible. If this ability was used correctly, he would still be very lethal while running, but he would also be much safer when he was standing still, as it would be more difficult for enemies to realize where he was. As for Wanda, she chose the Frost Armor skill, since as she already had powers focused on attack and control, what she lacked most was a way to defend herself, and Frost Armor was perfect. In the test she did, when she activated this ability her skin became so resistant that it was even difficult to wound her with a knife if the force used was not high enough. "It's like I'm always wearing protective armor as long as I keep this skill active," she said excitedly as she looked at the slightly frozen knife in her hand. When she attacked herself with the knife quickly began to freeze and the weight of it increased by approximately 30%, exactly as it happened in the game, which reduced the attack speed of the opponents who attacked her. When Wanda was getting ready to enter the abandoned house she and Pietro were living in, she heard a noise. This noise was very familiar to her, as it was the noise Pietro made when he stopped running next to her. "Want to play?" she asked excitedly as she looked at him. But when she saw his frustrated expression, she already imagined what was going on. "Did they find us again?" she asked as she began to close her eyes. "I think so. While I was testing my speed with Sneak I saw several cars similar to the ones Hydra used while we were there. Apparently they somehow discovered that we are living here," Pietro said a little frustrated. Wanda just nodded and continued with her eyes closed, using her powers. After a few minutes she finally opened her eyes and sighed too. "It really is them, we have to move, and this time to a very distant place," she said. Pietro also nodded and used his super speed to organize the few things they had, mainly the 2 old laptops they used to play Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. After packing everything, Wanda climbed onto Pietro's back while holding their bags and in the next second they were gone. The direction they went was close to NY, a small town called Bayville. Looking at the reports from Oasis, Alex was quite satisfied. The number of ESW players rose to 1.3 billion in the last week, with an average monthly fee of $10. That's at least $13 billion every month. Oasis, are there any problems with overcrowding or excessive population in a certain area of the game? Alex asked. In a normal MMORPG, if there are more than 20 players trying to kill monsters in a certain area, this will already bring a bad experience for the players. In ESW, each area could support several hundred players, even supporting a few thousand. Since the size of the areas, it was much bigger than the games he had played before. But even so, an average area would hardly support more than 3,000 people, and for a game with more than 1.3 billion players, if this were not well managed, it would be very simple for the areas to fill up. So Alex spent an entire night making more areas and expanding the world. Azeroth, which was the continent of the Alliance, was the size equivalent to 4 countries, with each country governed by a race. In the same way, it was the continent of the Horde. With this gigantic number of players, Alex had to expand the scale of the map quickly. Fortunately, even though the game was so realistic in scale, players who weren't in the same area could find themselves using capital portals or paying griffins to fly them from one corner to the other. To make this even more practical, Alex increased the flight speed of these griffins, which made the trip from one capital to another within just an hour. As the game did not yet have flying mounts, this speed would not cause any problems among players. And since ESW was just a game, while players were flying the griffins, they could disconnect from ESW and leave the character flying alone while they did something else in Oasis. Only in the last 5 minutes of the trip would the player be forced to return, so that the characters would not be clogging the area where other players wanted to pay for a griffin trip. This possibility made the ESW arena extremely busy, mainly because the arena had a player rating ranking, with the 1,000 players with the most points winning the title of Gladiator and appearing in the ranking for the whole world. What surprised Alex was that there were even stores in Oasis, mainly in hubs 71 and 72, that were focused exactly on players who were in the middle of a flight, with quick entertainment, fast food and quicker things for players to do in between. At first it was something very strange, but as time went by, it became customary for players to go to these stores and spend some money to have fun while flying in the game. As the price of things in Oasis was much lower, the players didn't mind spending like in real life, as it was as if their money was more valuable in Oasis than in real life. This not only generated more interest from big stores in opening branches in Oasis, but also small entrepreneurs saw a great opportunity to innovate with creative ideas and try in Oasis, as it would probably not end their lives in case of failure like in life real. There is no problem with overcrowding, sir. Currently the most populated area is the forest around Stormwind, with 7,519 players, reaching only 75% of the area's capacity. The other 471 million online players are spread out in other areas around the world without any problems. Listening to Oasis report, Alex was very satisfied. Having only 471 million players online didn't surprise him, even though it meant that approximately 2/3 were offline, because ESW was a worldwide game. While one side of the planet was playing, another part was working, while the other part was sleeping, leaving only an average of 1/3 of the players online, normally. Of course, this was only on normal days. On weekends, this value went up a lot, and Alex assumed that when he held an event this value would go up even more. But knowing that the game's population was well distributed across the map, Alex continued to look at the report in front of him, becoming more and more satisfied. Of the players who tested the game, more than 98% came back to play again, even if it was to try food, travel the world, or fly on the griffins. The game always had something to capture the maximum audience possible. Compared to the income from ESW, the income from Fortnite and Minecraft was very low, almost insignificant, but Alex didn't worry about it, as it wasn't a bad thing for him. His idea was to continue developing games, and even if the game wasn't something everyone would play, if that game was able to make someone's day better, Alex would be satisfied. And for that he already had some ideas. I'm going to wait for ESW to become more focused and only then can I start developing other games, especially with that portal, Alex thought as he remembered the portal that led to the world of Naruto. He had plans to return to that world, especially now that he was earning millions of GP per month. The time for him to go there was getting closer, but Alex didn't want to rush it. This world was in 2012, and knowing the plot of Avengers, the invasion would happen later this year, so he wanted to deal with the invasion here first before focusing on going to another world. It's a shame I don't remember exactly which month the invasion took place, Alex sighed. But thinking that even Thor is in Oasis, the probability of the date being different is very high, since the butterfly effect of me just being here would already happen, much less with how much I am affecting this world. It's not like Alex cared about it either. He wasn't going to limit his own life to maintain the original plot as he knew. As he had a way to get stronger, Alex just intended to get stronger and deal with the consequences of his actions. Oasis, how long until more players reach level 10? Alex asked. According to my calculations, in approximately 1 hour another players will reach level 10, after 20 minutes another will reach it, thus with time decreasing until in 24 hours the number of players at level 10 is approximately 80 players. With his hand on his chin, Alex began to think. 80 players with skills in real life in 24 hours, and this value will only increase. I think it will be better if I make an official announcement talking about this before something worse happens. Thinking about what he could say to the audience, Alex started to get excited thinking about how people would react to finding out that they could learn the game's skills in real life. Hello everyone, probably within a few hours some news will emerge about people who learned ESW powers in real life. We are here to clarify that this news is possibly true, as upon reaching level 10 in ESW the player will have the opportunity to learn a game skill in real life. Of course, as players already pay a monthly fee, we decided that learning these skills will be free, but please know that our resources are limited and we will not be able to make the skills available to everyone, so there will be a limited free quota every month where the first ones to request will get the skills, while the rest will have to wait for the next month, or pay to receive the skill immediately. We don't like this kind of thing, but we are forced to do it this way, since the cost of making a person learn such a powerful skill as a superpower is really very high, so we hope for everyone's understanding. We look forward to you showing us the skills you learn in real life. Notch. Likes, 42 million. Comments, 28 million. As soon as this post appeared on the Oasis forum, players were extremely shocked. Even the veteran players, who were already a little numb to the things that Mojang did since something surprising always came up, this time they were the ones who were most shocked. Players who played ESW were currently looking at their skill list and thinking about which skill would be useful to have in real life, while players who didn't play ESW were seriously considering starting to play to learn skills in real life as well. Of course, there were skeptical people who thought that Mojang was just making all this up to get attention, but these people were in the absolute minority, as the trust that Mojang has built with the community is so strong that even if this was something absurd, people still believed that Mojang could do it. Especially when a video was leaked on the internet. In that video, Notch was flying alongside Iron Man and said that the skill he used was an Elder Scrolls, Warcraft skill. If Notch had learned a skill from the game he made, why couldn't he teach the players those skills too? When this news came out, Ned and Peter looked at each other in shock. Peter because he wondered how many new people would have superpowers in the real world, and Ned because he realized that he could finally have a superpower in real life just like Peter. Oh my god, this is so cool. Ned said excitedly as he began to look at his abilities and imagine which one he could learn. Peter, what skill do you think I can learn to help you? Hearing Ned's question, Peter quickly understood his friend's point of view and was surprised. Really, is Ned really going to be able to help me deal with bandits? Peter was excited. As you are a shaman, we can think of 3 possibilities. One is that you get an offensive skill like Lightning Bolt where you can shoot lightning at the bandits, but as you have no combat preparation, this can make you very vulnerable. Peter said. The other is that you can learn a totem, where you can leave the totem in battle and use the totems to attack enemies automatically, so you're not in as much danger, but you'll also have to hide while the totems attack. Peter said the second option. The last option is for you to learn a healing skill, so while I'm in battle you can help me by being the chair guy, and when I return from battle you can still heal my injuries. Peter finally finished. Hearing all these possibilities, Ned was excited about them all, but thinking about how dangerous this would be, he ruled out the first possibility immediately. As for the other two possibilities, he still decided to wait a little longer to decide, since he was still at level 9 with only 10% express. Another person who was extremely shocked when she saw this news was Yao, the Ancient One. Why couldn't I see this future? Yao wondered in shock. From now on, whenever she tried to see the future, she could see small remnants of ordinary people using powers in the real world, but when she observed the future the day before, she still couldn't do that. Why can't I see your future, Notch? She asked as she looked at the player's reaction to Notch's news. To her surprise, people took this very well. The number of people who distrusted Mojang was so small it was almost insignificant. But what really surprised her were the comments from players who said they were students at Kamar Taj's School of Magic at Oasis. Wait, Strange said that the number of player mages that would join them was approximately 200,000 people. If all these people learn magic in real life, thinking about these possibilities made her even more shocked. The number of mages in Kamar Taj around the world is no more than 4,000, with another 200,000 people joining. My god, I have to get the mages to start playing ESW so they don't get left behind. Yao thought anxiously as she summoned Mordo. The anxiety that Yao felt to get all of her subordinates to start playing ESW was not something that only she began to feel, but it was also something that almost every leader around the world felt as well. Especially when the agents below them showed images of the spells and skills that the players learned in the game, thinking about how this would be useful for their country made them call meetings as quickly as possible. Even hospital directors and doctors felt the crisis coming, as with this news becoming true their jobs were at risk considering how strong the priests and paladins' healing abilities were. Now that I've explained the news to you, I trust everyone understands that we will need to learn these healing skills as quickly as possible if we want to continue working, right? A director of a large hospital in NY said with a serious expression. I've already asked my secretary to make a list of all the classes in the game that have healing abilities and select the most useful ones. I think the best way to stay where we are is to learn the skills closest to our real ability, since she also found news that the more you know about a skill, the better you will use that skill. As long as we can learn all the healing skills, our hospital will still remain one of the best hospitals in NY. And if we can get more skills than other hospitals, we could even move up to the biggest hospital in the city, the state, or even the country. Hearing the director's words, the doctors at the meeting had bright eyes thinking about the possibilities they would have of growing as professionals with these skills. When the meeting was over, the older doctors quickly called the younger doctors to explain to them more about the game and help with some things they didn't understand, as even he was fascinated and scared by these skills. What they realized was that these abilities coming into the real world could not only be a great blessing for them, but it could also become a nightmare that would knock them off their pedestal if they didn't adapt quickly. Within just a few hours, new posts about people learning real-life skills began to appear on the internet. This time this type of post was not only appearing on the Oasis forum but was also going viral on Twitch with videos of people showing off their powers in real life. Seeing other people getting powers in real life, players became even more excited about the game and started playing even more to reach level 10 as quickly as possible. Even some RP communities have decided to take a break from RP to focus on reaching level 10 first, as they understand the importance of learning these skills in real life. But those who were most surprised by this change were the X-Men. Charles Xavier at that moment was in a cafe in Oasis while reading the forum feed to find out the news, and seeing so many people interested in getting powers in real life caused him to be shocked. Mutants were always criticized and hated for having powers, now people were wanting powers too. What was happening? I think that was just jealousy. A familiar voice came from Charles's ear, causing him to turn to that person in shock. Notch? He asked in surprise, since it had been months since he had seen this person. The last time he saw Notch he didn't even know that Notch was the creator of Minecraft, and now here he is, every day having fun in Oasis and enjoying so many new experiences that this man he casually talked to once created. Long time, Professor. Notch said smiling. What do you mean by envy? Charles asked confused. You mutants were always the only ones who had the possibility of having powers, of being special. This aroused the envy of most people. But now you are no longer the only ones who can have powers. What do you think will happen? Notch asked. Thinking about this possibility, Charles was shocked. Will the hate go away? Bingo. Notch replied as he summoned a cup of hot chocolate. In fact, there will probably still be some hatred towards a few people, as prejudice and racism will never disappear, but it will decrease so much that you will go back to being treated just like normal people. Thinking about all of this and finally understanding that Notch's story was true, Charles's heart was racing so much that he couldn't even believe it. The only thing he could say was, "Thank you." Hearing this, Notch just smiled while shaking his head. You don't need to thank me, as a person this is the most basic thing I can do, especially since it's not difficult to do with my capabilities. Just enjoy your lives, it's what you deserve. After talking for a few more minutes, Notch finally teleported to another place, especially when the players around him started to notice him there and started recording him and taking photos to post online. Looking at the empty seat in front of him, Charles finally thought of something. I think Eric will be happy to hear that. I hope he doesn't try to do something stupid now that everyone will become equal. Charles thought excitedly. Even newspapers around the world were showing news about people who learned skills. Some countries were lucky to get more than one player who learned a skill today, while other countries were unlucky to not even have a player in their country. But not having anyone there who learned this didn't stop journalists from writing stories about these cases and even showing the players from their country who were closest to reaching level 10 in the Elder Scrolls Warcraft ranking. This wave of news on television managed to burst the ESW bubble even further, causing the number of players who visited Oasis that day to reach a historic peak of 3.1 billion different players. Of course, these new players did not become VIP or ESW subscribers immediately. The vast majority of players took a few days to finally be convinced to try Elder Scrolls Warcraft. Typically the first day of players experiencing Oasis was mainly players visiting the stores in the Oasis hubs. On the second day these players would go back to a store they liked and probably spend a few cents to buy something they liked to see what it was like, after watching other players buying things for a few minutes. On the third day, these players would be more open to spending money on Oasis and would probably spend a few dollars to have fun. With such an incredible experience at Oasis, the resistance that these players had to spending money there would have greatly diminished, to the point that on the fourth day the probability of the player trying to pay for an ESW subscription became very high. But this time, instead of waiting until the fourth day, on the second day most of the new players had already paid to try ESW, because the next day the news showed that hundreds of people around the world were learning skills. Even though these people were not very proficient in these skills, it still amazed many people. And with the news from Notch that places were limited, people couldn't wait and quickly paid the first monthly fee to try the game. Fortunately for players, the game's story was so engaging and the NPCs, artificial intelligence was so good that many people started playing with the mindset of doing everything as quickly as possible, but they soon gave up when they found themselves so involved in the stories of the characters' quests. Mainly because unlike other RPGs, the quests were not repetitive and boring. All ESW quests had a logical reason for happening, and things that players did in the game were causing NPCs to generate new quests all the time, making each person's experience unique. Something that started to enter the player's routine was watching livestreams of players from other races to see what the leveling experience and the quests of that race were like. Seeing that there were already 600 people at level 10 and that the queue to get skills was getting longer, Alex just shook his head and left it at that. But what he didn't imagine was that this queue to get skills in real life would be a good thing for the game, since the hype that players felt when they saw the number decreasing was as big as that of a child waiting for Christmas. Streams of people were even appearing showing time slowing down, and thousands of people were watching to see what these skills were like in real life. If the invasion takes a few months, it's possible I won't actually need to make a move to help NY. Alex thought excitedly as he looked at the game data. And as expected, what could go wrong, would go wrong. As Thor came to Earth of his own free will, he ended up not causing Asgard's battle with the Frost Giants, which was also delaying his coronation ceremony as king. But although this was slightly delayed, Odin was quite pleased to see Thor's change. As he could also see everything in the Nine Kingdoms, Odin was constantly observing Thor and how he was maturing by experiencing that Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. What left Odin very confused was that he couldn't see anything in ESW, until he understood that it was, in fact, just a virtual world, something that didn't exist in the Nine Realms, which made sense that he couldn't see something virtual. Fortunately, as Thor was still very young and immature, one thing he sought was glory, and there was nothing more glorious on Midgard these days than broadcasting what you were playing and letting millions of people watch you. When Thor discovered this, the first thing he did was open a livestream room for the Midgardians to watch how glorious he was. With that, Odin just needed to find a Midgardian who was watching Thor's stream and watch it through that person's computer with her. Initially, Odin was very embarrassed to see the future king of Asgard acting in such a shameful way because of his pride. But as the days passed, Thor began to mature. The class he had chosen was Paladin, which gave him powers reminiscent of the divine powers of light that were as useful for attack as they were for defense and healing. As some in-game missions for Paladins were to help people in need, Thor began to find a different purpose in his powers. Before, he thought powers were just for fighting and conquering everyone, but after seeing the chaos powerful people caused, and how grateful people were after he healed them, Thor began to feel a new purpose. I will use the power of holy light to save as many people as possible, Thor said excitedly on a livestream. As soon as he said this, a powerful golden light descended from the sky and blessed Thor, slightly increasing the power of his skills, leaving not only him surprised, but also the 80,000 viewers who were watching him at that moment. As they tried to understand what happened, Odin was shocked as he also felt Thor's change. As soon as Thor said that sentence, a strong willpower emerged from him, further increasing the power of his divinity. What was once just the thunder deity, was now also generating a small light deity, which was slowly merging with thunder. But unlike the thunder deity, who was much more aggressive and oppressive, the light deity was much calmer and comforting, which could cause confusion within Thor, was now balancing. Feeling the divine powers in his son's body growing even more, Odin became even more excited about Thor's progress and did not worry much about the coronation ceremony. If he waited a few more months, or a few years, wouldn't Thor already have strength as powerful as his and a more mature and benevolent mind like his? At that moment Asgard would have the perfect king. Ha ha ha. Odin laughed to himself in the throne room. Elsewhere in Asgard, unlike Odin, who was excited about Thor's progress, Loki, who also used some means to find out how Thor was furious. Thinking that leaving his brother isolated on Midgard would bring him several new opportunities to take the throne and become the new king, Loki was very excited, but reality was cruel to him. Odin did not consider letting him be king at any time. So to deal with this frustration, Loki had an idea. One of his informants said that there was a mad titan with a gigantic army in the universe looking for some stones, and one of those stones was in Midgard. As this titan is afraid of his father, Loki thought he could trick this titan into giving part of his army to attack Midgard, thus destroying this game that Thor was playing and becoming more and more pleasant for his father. If Thor can no longer mature or even misses the game so much that he will also stop progressing, won't I be the only possible heir to Asgard? Loki thought excitedly as he began contacting his informants across the universe. Because of this small change from Thor, the NY invasion will likely happen several months in advance. But the way Alex was now, that wouldn't necessarily pose much of a threat to him. This invasion would likely become a stepping stone that would finally cause Alex to completely conquer Earth's entire population, as this will make people feel like powers are no longer just a luxury, but a necessity to defend themselves in the event of another invasion. Remembering the cave he entered, Alex became quite thoughtful. Maybe I should go and have another look. If the Uzumaki country still exists, I might be able to save them. I just don't know what timeline that world is in, Alex started to think. If it's too close to the Second Shinobi World War, it will be difficult to save them without me appearing in person as Notch, or in my true appearance to save them. Alex thought. The best result would be to give them the power to save themselves, so they would be grateful and the other countries would be jealous. Nothing would be better than jealousy to make them want to spend more money on Oasis to become stronger. But now I have a big question. Should I make an exclusive server for the ninja world? Their culture is very different. Thinking about the ninja world, Alex thought that maybe making a separate server in the beginning and then merging it in the future would be a good idea. Maybe I could even use the other ESW races that would be released in the future and just make that available to the ninjas. So when the Ninja World players connect with the Marvel players, the races from both worlds will be available to the others, make a major expansion on both sides. Alex started to get excited as he thought about it. The last time he had played WoW, each faction had 11 races, which was much more than the 3 races available now, which could easily be used for these other world expansions. While Alex wrote down what he was planning for the future on one computer monitor, the other monitor was connected to the Thor livestream. Unfortunately, Alex realized that he could only manage the settings of the games he made through the physical computer, but that there was an option where he could use these settings in a VR way within the Oasis for a 20 million GP upgrade, or he could do a 50 million GP upgrade and make this AR technology, allowing him to be able to configure all of this on floating screens around him in reality. But the second upgrade would only be unlocked after he made the first upgrade, that is, to be able to manage games in the real world without having to sit in front of the computer. Alex would have to spend 70 million GP. A number that a few months ago was something completely impossible and distant, was now not so impossible. If he just joined for a few months, he could easily get this upgrade, but to do so he would have to spend that time without releasing updates to the games or even without making skills available to the players, which was completely unfeasible for him. Looking at Thor's livestream screen, the scene where Odin saw that Thor had been blessed by the light also surprised Alex. What is that? My light magic is more powerful. Thor asked himself in confusion, leaving the viewers as confused as he was. Did the god of light bless you because of your kind and selfless heart? A viewer finally deduced it. The god of light really exists. Could it be that an admin did this? Another viewer asked. Seeing the reaction of the viewers and Thor, Alex smiled. Unlike WoW, where the god of light was something very ethereal and just a belief initially, Alex actually created an artificial intelligence to act as the god of light, a god that could bless or curse players depending on their actions. In addition to the god of light, other gods were also created, as well as druid and shamanic spirits to interact with the players. Surprisingly, Thor was the first player blessed by the god of light, which quickly began to spread across the internet as new information. Epic experience, the paladin blessed by the god of light. Hello adventurers, today I had a big surprise when looking for a paladin livestream on Twitch. The surprise came from a Thor livestream. Unlike other paladin streams that I was watching, streamer Thor was truly acting as if he were a paladin in that world, something like those roleplay players, but when they asked him, he didn't even know what roleplay was. But until then everything was normal, until suddenly, Thor had an epiphany and decided to dedicate himself to being the paladin who would save the most lives in the game, and then a divine light came down to him and blessed him. When he went to test his abilities, both the damage he dealt and the healing he did had been increased by at least 20%. Do you know what this is? Paladin, who previously had one of the lowest damage in the game, after this blessing probably not only caught up with the other classes, but even passed most of them. As I am also a paladin, I decided to try to receive this blessing on my game character, but unfortunately I couldn't. I think the God of Light could see that I wasn't sincere and just wanted the blessing, so he didn't bless me. Going back to watch Thor's livestream, I realized that he was too lazy to read the God of Light's Bible, but he was listening to it as an audiobook while he killed monsters because apparently he really liked those grand stories of the paladin battles of the past. With what I learned from him, I decided to do something I never imagined I would do. Just like the Magic School Guild only accepts mages, I decided to make the Holy Church Guild which will only accept paladins and priests. Together we will study the God of Light and exchange knowledge about this God, so perhaps we can help each other obtain the blessing and make our classes even more powerful. When Alex saw this post, he was visibly shocked. Despite having placed the God of Light in Azeroth, Alex did not imagine that the players would create a real church for this virtual god. And looking at the amount of likes this post had, the amount of paladins and priests that would join them was colossal, as everyone wanted to become stronger. The Magic School Guild already exists, now the Holy Church Guild is emerging. What will come in the future? The Dark Church Guild. Alex wondered as he laughed. But suddenly Alex had a bad feeling. Searching for Dark Church Guild, Alex realized this was really happening. When players playing Warlock saw that paladins and priests were joining together to worship the God of Light to become stronger, they were also curious if this would work for them. Instead of worshipping the God of Light, the players from the Dark Church Guild worshipped both the God of Darkness and demons. Alex was starting to get worried, deciding to find out if these players were going overboard. Alex logged into his admin account and went to the base of the newly established Dark Church Guild. At the entrance to the guild, Alex saw something that made him freeze for a second. As the game was still in the early stages, the players didn't even have a gold coin, so even renting land was almost impossible for them. So with no official place, the players found a cave that didn't spawn monsters and decided to make that place their temporary base. Despite the place being rustic, there were at least 80 players in that cave talking and laughing while exchanging knowledge about the dark magic of warlocks and what they could do to be blessed by the God of Darkness. The Dark God really was something that Alex had created, so if they really put their mind to it, it was actually possible for them to achieve this. Theoretically, all classes could be blessed by a god or a spirit, but even the blessing from one player to another depended on how much the player dedicated himself to that being. The buff that Thor received was 20% on his skills, but depending on how Thor acts, he can increase this buff to up to 100%. Alex thought it would take a few months for these players to get their first blessing, but it was really difficult to control the seventh natural disaster, the players. Seeing the warlocks worshipping dark gods and demons to obtain blessings wasn't surprising at all, but one of the beings these players were worshipping made Alex freeze. In one of the paintings drawn by the players, in a place where 5 players were kneeling and praying, the drawing in that painting was a very well-known figure in other games. Herobrine. Yes, these players were all wearing black clothes as they knelt in the center of a pentagram and prayed to Herobrine. But the most surprising thing for Alex was that this was a little familiar to him. Where have I seen these players before? Alex asked himself confused. Oasis, convey these players' prayers to me. Alex ordered the Oasis AI. Suddenly, Alex started listening to what these players were saying and finally understood why these players were so familiar. Weren't these players the players who were killed by him in the Hypixel invasion because he was making an offering to Herobrine? Haven't they given up trying to worship Herobrine yet? Alex was surprised. To say that he wasn't moved at all would be a lie, as you could see that even after almost a year these players were still dedicated to praying for him. How about I give them a little blessing? Alex asked himself a little uncertainly. He did not want the official religion of the Warlocks to become Herobrine due to his oversight, as he wanted the lore of that world to develop naturally. But seeing these players so dedicated to him made Alex's heart soften a little. I think just a small gift wouldn't be a problem, right? I already know. Alex thought as he controlled Oasis to put these players into an illusion. Vorith was the nickname of the leading player of these 5 Herobrine worshippers. Ever since they saw Herobrine in person at the Hypixel invasion, Vorith and his friends were devoted to worshipping Herobrine, as the way Herobrine acted was so badass. Unfortunately they didn't get any results in the other games, he and his friends were even almost giving up on it, until the post about Paladin Thor caught the attention of Vorith, who got together with his friends and other Warlock players to try to find out who their god would be. Out of habit, Vorith decided to try praying to Herobrine, something they considered their last attempt. For the first few minutes, nothing was happening, something that started to really disappoint Vorith. I think maybe we'd better give up. Vorith asked himself a little disappointed. Until suddenly, Vorith began to feel as if the world was spinning. Startled, Vorith opened his eyes and saw as if the world was being sucked into a black hole. The other warlocks were being sucked in, but apparently they didn't even notice what was happening, just his other 4 friends who were looking around desperately. But this feeling didn't last long, in a few seconds they had fallen into a black place. Everything around him was black, the floor, the walls, the ceiling, everything was black, as if the space was infinite. What is happening? One of Vorith's friends asked a little scared. I don't know, Vorith replied in confusion as he looked around. Until suddenly, 2 points of white light appeared in front of them. Looking at those 2 points of light, Vorith felt his blood freeze as a euphoria surged through his body. Without thinking twice, Vorith knelt on the ground as he screamed. Vorith presents himself to Lord Herobrine. Seeing Vorith acting like this, the other 4 players quickly knelt down and did the same thing. Have you guys been looking for my blessing for so long? Herobrine asked in an icy and mysterious voice. Vorith soon understood that Herobrine recognized them and smiled as he responded. Yes, my lord, since that day we have been dedicating ourselves to obtaining your blessing. After Vorith's response, silence hung in the air for a few seconds, until a sigh came from Herobrine. You really surprised me with your dedication, but you are looking for the wrong god in this world. In Azeroth my power is limited, since I am not a god here, but since you 5 have dedicated yourself so much, I can give you a small gift. You will just have to keep our contact a secret. If any of you tell other players about me, the blessing will be cancelled immediately. Herobrine said in a cold voice. Hearing this, the 5 players felt their hearts speed up even as they nodded their heads. Who in their right mind would be foolish enough to tell the secret of a god to other players? With an apparent nod from Herobrine, which they only noticed because of the slight movement of his glowing eyes, Vorith and his friends felt a power entering their bodies. Curious, Vorith looked at his stats and saw that he received a 10% boost to his stats, only half of what Thor received from the God of Light, but that was nothing for them to complain about, especially since they noticed in the name of the blessing that this was just an initial blessing, that is, this blessing could be improved over time. Looking around, Vorith saw that the eyes of his 4 friends were faintly glowing with a white light, something very reminiscent of Herobrine. Oasis also had an option for the player to buy an eye glow like Herobrine to use as a skin, but in ESW this wasn't just a skin, but a true recognition of Herobrine for them. The weight it had was much greater than it seemed. With a smile on his face, which the players couldn't see, Herobrine waved his hand and sent these players back to the cave they were in. I think that way they were happy for a while, right? Alex wondered as he laughed. As ESW already had the Church of Light made by NPCs, the players from the Holy Church Guild began to interact more with the NPCs of that church and realized that as the days went by, their popularity with these NPCs was increasing, which also increased the friendliness and likelihood of these NPCs trusting them to give hidden quests. This development not only surprised the Holy Church Guild players, but also the normal players, as no one imagined that something like this could change an NPC's opinion. And not only that, if an NPC's favorability towards a player rose so much they could get hidden quests, with much better rewards than normal quests. The artificial intelligence of these NPCs is much greater than I imagined. Nick Fury was shocked as he watched this. Before he had been shocked only by the graphical and mechanical capabilities of the games, as other games were practically just interactions between players with no space for NPCs. Later, in Oasis, some NPCs appeared, but their intelligence still showed some flaws at the beginning, which gradually became smaller and less noticeable. Until now he was observing the current state of these artificial intelligences, and if there wasn't a name written in a different color, no one would realize that the thing in front of them was not a real person, but just a program running data. Notch probably used the players in Oasis to train this artificial intelligence so that it would finally be ready enough for him to use in Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. Fury sighed. As Fury had agents of all classes and all races, information reached him first. Unlike other players who were still discovering which classes could be blessed, he already knew of at least 4 players from different classes who were blessed. The first was a paladin, Thor, the others were a hunter, a shaman and a rogue, who apparently had more connection with the gods and spirits of the game, besides the rogue, of course. Another thing he discovered from some of these players was that all the blessed ones had some connection with the class they chose in real life. That is, either ESW could read people's minds to know about their lives outside of the game, or the ESW could analyze people's actions to determine how sincere they were. I hope it's the second option, Nick sighed. Fortunately, the rogue who was blessed was his subordinate. Unlike the paladin who was blessed by a god of light, Natasha was blessed by a woman who called herself Daedric Princess Nocturnal. Unlike Thor who was only blessed by a light from the sky, Natasha also heard a voice in her head, explaining that she was a Daedric princess and that her name was Nocturnal, the deity of night, darkness and luck. While Thor's blessing provided him with a 20% increase at all times, Natasha's blessing had conditions, being 25% during the night or in darkness, and only half that during the day or in light. From what Natasha said, this was because she was just at the beginning, but according to the Daedric princess, if she continued following this path, the blessing would be enhanced. Which made Nick deduce something. I've never heard of a Daedric princess, which is to say, there are probably many more deities than we know of, and it might even be possible that some deities could curse the players instead of blessing them. The conditions for getting a deity to bless them can be very different from each other, which is why other classes still don't have any players with a blessing, even though there are more than 1 billion players. Nick began to speculate. Probably the best way to get a blessing is to follow a certain philosophy to the extreme, so if there is a deity in that philosophy, that deity will probably bless that player. Nick got excited when he thought about this and soon commanded some agents to test his theory. While Nick controlled the agents to test this, players around the world were being shocked to discover the second player to be blessed. The hunter named Bullseye was blessed by an unknown deity. When the players asked him what it was, he just remained silent and didn't explain, but his guild, Fisk Industries, announced that he had been blessed and showed his effectiveness before and after being blessed, proving to the players that he had truly been blessed. His greatest characteristic was that he was a hunter who didn't use a pet, he just used a rifle and his skills as a hunter, being completely self-sufficient. Which made the players deduce that this was the reason he was blessed, which caused many hunters to abandon their pets and focus on trying to develop as Bullseye. Many hunters even started lining up to join the Fisk Industries Guild, wanting to learn from Bullseye how to be blessed as well. This large number of players joining his guild was exactly what Fisk wanted, as with this he would not only get more manpower in the game, but also his influence in the world would become increasingly greater, both in the game and in the game, real life. Unfortunately for Fisk, even though he met the criteria to redeem a skill for real life and paid to skip the line to receive that skill, he still couldn't use that skill for the things he wanted, as he failed all of the skill checks. Oasis personality. But what if he hired normal people from the game to learn the skills for him and let those people use them for whatever he told them to do? I will have to test in the future with these new players, but if I can get an army of players with healing skills, even if the men under my command cannot use skills, they will still be able to go into battle without fear of death and come back to be cured by the healers, Fisk said his plan alone in the office with a smile. The news about skills was still only known by a small group of people, but a post on the ESW forum ended this little secret and began to shock the world. ESW gave me superpowers. ESW gave me superpowers. Yes, You read that title right, ESW gave me superpowers. Hello, Susa Maria Smith, a simple accountant in an accounting company like several others in Manhattan. The only interesting thing I had in my life was that I was the highest level player among my friends in Elder Scrolls, Warcraft. So much so that while my friends were still at level 8, I had just reached level 10. What surprised me was that upon reaching level 10, the game unlocked a function for me to learn a skill in real life. Screenshot 1. PNG. This is what the screen layout looks like where I can choose my skill. As a warlock who leveled up 10 levels in 20 days like nothing other than my imp friend who I named Kitty, the first skill that crossed my mind to select was the imp summon skill. So that's what I did. After I selected the skill, a tab appeared with a loading screen saying that I was in the queue and that it would take 14 years for me to learn the skill. Screenshot 2. PNG. As it was late, I decided to disconnect from the game and go to sleep. The next day I had to go to work and I didn't connect to the game, but when I got home and opened ESW, there it was, the skill was just a click away. I want to learn this in real life. To be honest, I actually had a little doubt if I would actually learn something like that in real life, but thinking about how Notch was using magic in real life in that fight with Iron Man, there was a small spark of hope in me saying that it would probably be real. Trying to control my anticipation, I clicked to learn the skill. In my head was a little fuzzy for a few seconds until I felt a memory as if I had studied this skill for several years and actually managed to use it. Without controlling myself, I left the game and decided to try. Just like in ESW, I could feel my mana in real life, which made my hope increase even more. Now, guess if I made it. Selfie with Kitty Imp. PNG. Photoshop experts, you can analyze this selfie I just took with Kitty in real life and confirm whether or not this is computer graphics. Ha ha ha, yes friends, I became a warlock in real life. Just like in the game, Kitty has the intelligence of a 3-year-old child, but her proficiency in battle is very high, and she is very strong despite her small size. If you want to see more about my life with Kitty, follow me on Instagram. There I will post photos daily and answer everyone's questions about whatever you want to know. My Instagram is @MarianneKitty. 12M likes, 9M comments, 31M shares. Initially, everyone who knew that ESW skills could be learned in real life were angry to see someone divulging the secret to the rest of the players, but when they saw the end of the post they understood why this player did this. Looking curiously at her profile on Instagram, the players saw that she already had more than 3 million followers. Considering how much brands were paying celebrities to promote them on the internet, this woman could practically retire from her formal job and just live off advertising on his profile. It really was a smart move. Such a smart move that other players who learned skills in real life also started doing this, posting on the ESW forum and attracting people to their Instagram, of course, only the players who weren't anyone's subordinates. Players around the world were shocked. Bro, did you see that you can learn ESW skills in real life? A boy asked his friend at school. Yes bro, I want to learn stealth as quickly as possible, he said as he lowered his voice. Imagine going into the girls' bathroom with stealth on. Hearing his friend's idea, the boy was surprised and envious that his friend could learn this skill. Conversations like this were happening a lot around the world. In just a few days it was already possible to see people walking down the street with imps following them by their side, people with slightly transparent bodies, people who could conjure rain clouds that cured the sick, and even people transforming into bears to fight. Of course, because of the queue that was getting longer and longer, the amount of people with skills was still very small, to the point that a person with an ESW skill would instantly become famous in a city. When people started to see others learning skills that were so useful in the game, the number of players subscribing to ESW increased exponentially. From the initial 1.3 billion players, in just a few days it had already increased to 2.5 billion, and the number continued to rise. Even among the wealthy, as it was extremely expensive to jump the skill queue, using an ESW skill in real life was seen as a form of status. You couldn't say you were rich if you didn't have the ability to spend a few million to jump the queue and learn the skill you wanted. For people who bought luxury cars worth millions, paying a few million to learn a skill that could save their lives was not a waste of money at all. If you didn't have money, just sell some cars and buy a skill. It's better to have fewer cars to be able to protect your own life with a skill than to have a full garage and be able to die at any moment. Of course, there were also complaints from people who didn't pass the character analysis and couldn't learn skills, which started to worry people that maybe they would never be able to learn a skill in real life. But when Oasis' explanation came out saying why these people didn't have the right to learn the skill in real life, the public became very excited and Oasis' public image became even better. Even public agencies were encouraging police officers to play ESW, paying their monthly fees, so that they could learn the skills and further help with public safety, even more so after knowing that the criminals probably couldn't learn the skills. In just a few days after Maria Smith's post, the world began to change, and once a place that was extremely racist towards people who had powers, it was now slowly changing the mindset to idolize people with powers. And the ones who were feeling it the most were people like Alex's girlfriend, the X-Men. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.